Did you know in the books, it might not have been Olenna Tyrell and Littlefinger who murdered Joffrey, since, in the books, Joffrey's murder is made to look like a choking and resembles nothing like what was shown in the TV show? It's only when Cersei accuses Tyrion, and an autopsy later proves there was no food in Joffrey's throat, that Tyrion is charged with murder. However, why put choking poison in the wine goblet that Joffrey and, incidentally, Margaery were both drinking from in the books? What makes more sense is putting it in the pie. However, Joffrey doesn't eat his pie in the books. Instead, he eats Tyrion's, and it's only after eating Tyrion's pie that Joffrey starts to choke. Meaning Tyrion was Littlefinger's target, not Joffrey, since after Tyrion's death, Sansa would be free to marry anyone. But as of right now, Littlefinger isn't free to marry Sansa off until Tyrion officially dies.
This video will go through the last season of Game of Thrones that actually tried to adapt the books properly, and George R.R. Martin was still involved in, which was season 4. Even though this season was great, we'll use artwork to show what was too dark for the TV show to adapt. Tywin Lannister has decided to have the ancient Valyrian steel greatsword of House Stark, ice, melted and transformed into 2 smaller swords. While observing the process, he casually tosses the sword's wolf-fur scabbard into the smith's fire, a satisfied smile playing on his lips as he sees it consumed by flames. He has one sword made for his son Jaime and the other for his grandson Joffrey. Tywin impresses Jaime, who acknowledges that the Lannisters have been without a Valyrian steel sword for many generations. Tywin shares that he got the original sword from someone who had no use for it anymore, and then enlisted a skilled Volantene blacksmith, known for his expertise with Valyrian steel, to reforge it. In the book, Tywin refrains from summoning a smith from Volantis to reforge ice, and there is no mention of there being only 3 smiths capable of working with Valyrian steel. Instead, the task is undertaken by Tobo Mott, Gendry's former master from Qohor, who is renowned for being able to reforge Valyrian steel. Maybe because the show couldn't get the actor who portrayed Tobo Mott to reprise his role. Despite the frequent mentions of Valyrian steel and the Valyrian language on the show, the Valyrian civilization itself, along with its location and fate, is rarely discussed in great detail. Valyria served as the magnificent capital of the Valyrian freehold, which encompassed a significant portion of the Essos continent. Approximately 4 centuries prior to the beginning of the show, the city faced near total destruction during the catastrophic event known as the Doom of Valyria. This calamity consisted of a series of massive volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. As a result, the dragon population on the continent was severely diminished, and the collapse of the Valyrian realm indirectly led to the surviving Targaryen family, accompanied by their dragons, invading Westeros nearly a century later. This particular episode is the first episode to acknowledge that the art of crafting Valyrian steel was lost during the Cataclysm. Tywin expresses his desire for Jaime to be his successor and come back to Casterly Rock. Jaime, however, expresses his determination to remain in the Kingsguard. Enraged by Jaime's defiance and lack of ambition, Tywin coldly dismisses him but nonetheless instructs him to keep the sword. In the books, Jaime is furious upon receiving the new sword, viewing it as a cruel mockery following his disfigurement. Also, the conversation between Jaime and Tywin takes a heated turn. Jaime erupts in anger when he declares his intention to remain in the Kingsguard. Tywin responds harshly, stating, "You are not my son." This marks their final conversation in the books. In the book, Tywin reveals the sword intended for Joffrey's wedding in the small council chamber, showing it first to Tyrion. This occurs prior to the Red Wedding, when Jaime was still in the Riverlands. It is Tyrion, not Jaime, who privately reflects on the Lannisters' desire for a Valyrian steel sword. Tywin's efforts to obtain one for the family are elaborated on in the books, detailing his unsuccessful attempts to purchase one from impoverished houses. Geryon, Tywin's younger brother, embarked on a mission to find Brightroar, the Lannisters' lost ancestral sword, but never returned. Tyrion, Bronn, and Podrick are waiting on a road outside the city for the arrival of Prince Doran Martell of Dorne, who has been invited to the royal wedding. While Bronn is unable to answer Tyrion's questions on the sigils of the Dornish houses, Podrick impresses with his correct responses. Bronn acknowledges the need for a sigil now that he has been knighted.
In the books, Tyrion came up with the ingenious plan to use a massive chain to trap Stannis' fleet within Blackwater Bay, while Bronn was entrusted with the task of operating the chain. As a token of his triumph after being knighted, Bronn opted for a sigil depicting a flaming green chain to commemorate his pivotal role in the victory. In the television adaptation of Blackwater, the chain was omitted, but Bronn's contribution remained crucial as he fired the flaming arrow that set the wildfire ablaze. In the books, it is Joffrey, not Bronn, who makes a derogatory joke about the Dornish. He quips, "How many Dornishmen does it take to shoe a horse? 9. 1 to do the shoeing, and 8 to lift the horse up." Suddenly, Lord Blackmont rides up and informs them that Prince Doran is unwell and will not be attending. Prince Oberyn, his brother, has arrived in his place and is already at the city. Tyrion instructs the City Watch to handle the welcome of the Dornish lords and urges them to locate Oberyn quickly to prevent any potential incidents. Lord Blackmont discloses that Doran Martell's well-being has limited him to Sunspear. In the books, though, Prince Doran has not visited the Dornish capital for 2 years, favouring the tranquility and seclusion of the Water Gardens, his summer residence. Prince Oberyn and his lover Ellaria Sand are inspecting some prostitutes at a brothel run by Peter Baelish. The establishment is currently being overseen by Oliver while Lord Baelish is away in the Vale. Oberyn and Ellaria decide to select the contortionist named Mare. Oberyn then instructs Oliver to undress. Oberyn becomes furious upon hearing the song The Rains of Castamere being sung by men. He approaches 2 Lannister soldiers and criticizes them for not living up to the reputation of being golden lions, but acting as small pink men who lack skill. The confrontation escalates as one of the soldiers reaches for his weapon, prompting Oberyn to swiftly stab him in the wrist with a dagger. He warns the other soldier that his companion will only survive if he seeks immediate medical attention. Just then, Tyrion and Bronn arrive, and Oberyn and Tyrion opt to step outside for a private conversation. In the book, Oberyn's entourage reaches King's Landing prior to the Red Wedding. When Tyrion encounters them, they are accompanied by Lord Giles, Jalabar, Sho, Sir Adam, Bronn, Podrick, and a group of gold cloaks. Additionally, Oberyn meets Tyrion in a different setting rather than a brothel. Oberyn shares his desire for retribution for the deaths of his niece Rhaenys, nephew Aegon, and the heinous crimes committed against his sister Elia during the fall of King's Landing by Lannister forces. Oberyn has finally provided confirmation regarding the atrocities committed by the Mountain towards the Targaryen children during the sack of King's Landing. In the episode Baelor, Maester Aemon briefly mentions the tragic fate of the children, stating that they were all killed, including the innocent little ones. Additionally, in the episode And Now His Watch is Ended, Thoros recounts witnessing the lifeless bodies of the deceased children being presented before the Iron Throne. It is evident that Viserys and Daenerys would have suffered a similar fate if they had not been sent away to Dragonstone beforehand. In the books, the brutal slaying of Elia Martell and her children Rhaenys and Aegon is vividly described in the first novel. However, it is important to note that while the Mountain was responsible for the deaths of Elia and Aegon, it was Amory Lorch who mercilessly stabbed the 4-year-old Rhaenys nearly 50 times due to her persistent screams and resistance. When Tyrion and Oberyn have a private meeting, they share a humorous moment about being the second sons in their families. Interestingly, Oberyn might have once been a member of the Second Sons mercenary group while in Essos. Oberyn's introduction in the show mirrors Tyrion's in Winter is Coming, as he is discovered in a brothel after arriving ahead of the royal envoy. Daenerys Targaryen is seated by the sea alongside her 3 dragons, each one comparable in size to a small horse. While Daenerys affectionately pets Drogon, Rhaegal and Viserion engage in a scuffle over a deceased lamb. Drogon eventually joins the fray. Despite Daenerys' efforts to pacify him, Drogon suddenly snaps at her with a hiss, signaling her not to intervene. Subsequently, he lets out a roar and heads towards the disputed prey. Witnessing her own offspring defy her authority and grow beyond her control visibly unsettles Daenerys. Jorah Mormont then approaches her and conveys that dragons can never truly be tamed, not even by their own mother. Upon her return to the Unsullied army, Daenerys notices the absence of Grey Worm and Daario Naharis. Informed that they are gambling, she embarks on a search to locate them.
Eventually, she discovers the two men engaged in a face-to-face contest, each holding their weapons in front of them. Their endurance challenge has been ongoing since midnight. Daario clarifies that they are determining who will have the privilege of riding up front with Daenerys in the vanguard. Feeling frustrated, Daenerys declares that Ser Jorah and Ser Barristan will be bestowed with this honor, as they did not keep her waiting all morning. She commands Grey Worm and Daario to ride at the rear of the army alongside the livestock. Additionally, Daenerys asserts that the last man holding his sword will need to seek a new queen to fight for. Instantly, both men drop their weapons. It is never mentioned in the books that Grey Worm has any romantic interest in Missandei. Additionally, it is worth noting that Missandei is only 10 years old in the books. However, the books do highlight that the Unsullied, despite lacking certain physical attributes, still possess emotions and can form deep connections with others, especially now that Daenerys has liberated them from their oppressive enslavement. Contrary to the TV show, Grey Worm and Daario Naharis never engage in gambling activities together. Tyrion, Sansa, Shae, and another handmaiden are seated in a garden. Sansa is still deeply upset by the tragic loss of her family members. Despite Tyrion's efforts to offer comfort, Sansa remains inconsolable after learning the horrifying details of the Red Wedding. Feeling isolated, Sansa retreats to the Godswood where she can find solace in solitude. Meanwhile, Tyrion returns to find Shae waiting for him in his chambers. Anxious to keep their relationship secret, Tyrion reprimands Shae. She tries to seduce him, but he resists her advances. Accusing him of trying to manipulate her with gifts and exile her to the Free Cities, Shae storms out of the room. However, a handmaiden named Bernadette, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, notices Shae leaving the chambers in a fit of anger. In Cersei's chambers, Jaime, Cersei, and Qyburn are present. Cersei presents a golden prosthetic hand made for Jaime, which Qyburn then attaches to his stump. After inquiring about Cersei's symptoms, she confirms they are gone. As Qyburn leaves, Jaime expresses his intention to remain in the Kingsguard with one hand so he can be near Cersei. According to the Histories and Lore episode Robert's Rebellion, Jaime Lannister, when the Mad King appointed Jaime to the Kingsguard, ensuring that he could not be married off and would stay by her side in King's Landing, Jaime would be close to Cersei as their father served as Hand of the King in the capital at that time. However, when Tywin, deprived of his heir, angrily resigned as Hand and took Cersei back to Casterly Rock, leaving Jaime in the capital, they would not reunite until she was wed to King Robert. Jaime attempts to kiss her, but she rejects him, leaving Jaime both confused and angered. Cersei implies a shift in their relationship. Bernadette suddenly interrupts with important information for Cersei. George R.R. Martin had a final meeting with the showrunners before leaving the show after the third season to outline the general plot of his last two novels. There has been speculation that Cersei might become pregnant again, as hinted in the fourth and fifth novels, and the showrunners attempted to foreshadow this in an episode when they initially planned for 7 seasons, despite Cersei and Jaime not having had intercourse yet. However, with the show extended to 8 seasons, Cersei's pregnancy storyline was pushed to season 7. It is also possible that Cersei could have become pregnant from one of her other partners and sought an abortion from Qyburn. Alternatively, her symptoms could be related to alcohol withdrawal, as Jaime notices her increased drinking. Cersei's promiscuity and alcohol abuse are more emphasized in the novels than in the series. Jaime is sporting a shorter haircut now that he has returned to King's Landing. In the novel, he had already shaved his head while underway to the capital with Brienne to avoid being recognized. He also grew a thick beard for that purpose. Ygritte and Tormund are stationed outside a stone ravine. Tormund scolds her for not successfully assassinating Jon Snow. Suddenly, their scouts indicate that someone is approaching. Styr and a group of Thenns make their way towards them through the ravine. Away from hearing distance, Tormund expresses his disdain for Thenns. Styr mentions that his group pillaged a village south of the ravine and acquired meat. He notes that the meat tastes much better south of the wall and criticizes Tormund for losing their Warg and Jon. He points out how the Night's Watch is indulging and growing plump at Castle Black. Styr proposes that Tormund try crow meat before meeting his end while a human arm is cooking over a fire. Contrary to popular belief, the Thenns in the books are not cannibals. This misconception arises from the confusion between the Thenns and another wildling tribe known as the Ice River Clans, who do practice cannibalism. In reality, the Thenns are considered the most civilized among the wildlings, as they have their own lords who enforce their own laws. At Castle Black, Jon Snow has managed to survive the injuries inflicted by Ygritte and has made significant progress in his recovery. However, he still experiences discomfort while dressing and walks with a slight limp. It was revealed in the episode that mere weeks have passed since the last episode of Season 3 Misa, indicating that Jon should have appeared somewhat gaunt due to his recovery from arrow injuries. However, as Kit Harington had been working on Pompeii 2014, during the gap between the 3rd and 4th seasons, he was actually in better physical condition than ever before. In order to conceal this, Harrington's character was not shown shirtless throughout the entirety of the 4th season. Upon learning about Robb's demise, Jon confides in Samwell Tarly, expressing his long-standing envy towards Robb for receiving more affection from their father and excelling in riding, fighting, and even with the opposite sex. Despite these feelings, Jon admits that he could never bring himself to harbor hatred towards Robb. In response, Sam reveals that he has experienced similar sentiments towards Jon, acknowledging that Jon surpasses him in every aspect except for reading. In the book, Jon asserts that he is a superior swordsman compared to Robb. Jon has been summoned to testify before a panel of 5 sworn brothers. This panel includes Maester Aemon, Acting Lord Commander Alliser Thorne, First Builder Othel Yarwick, and the exiled former Lord Commander of the King's Landing City Watch. Both Thorne and Slint openly display hostility towards Jon, doubting much of what he says. During the hearing, Jon confesses to killing Corran but asserts that it was not murder. Instead, Corran wanted Jon to kill him in order to gain credibility with the wildlings and infiltrate Mance Rayder's army as a spy. Slint dismisses Jon as the illegitimate son of a traitor, while Thorne, who was friends with Corran, reacts with disbelief that Jon would dare to claim he knew the half-hand. Jon responds by reminding Thorne that Corran would have done anything to protect the Night's Watch. In the Nightlands, or Season 2, Slint Dominic Carter was banished to the Wall by Tyrion. Now, in Jon Snow's absence, Slint has finally reached his destination. Meanwhile, Alliser Thorne, who was hinted to have returned to King's Landing in the same episode to alert the king about the White Danger, has also come back. He has taken on the role of Lord Commander after Jorah Mormont's demise. Alliser Thorne's absence in Seasons 2 and 3 was due to prior commitments by the actor. When Jon refers to the wildlings as free folk, Slint accuses him of assimilating with them to the point of adopting their language. Jon retorts, acknowledging that he does speak like a wildling and admits to living among them, sharing meals with them, and even climbing the wall alongside them. He stops short of admitting that he slept with one of them, but he implies it nonetheless. Slint demands Jon's execution for breaking his vows. Aemon highlights the impracticality of executing every ranger who engages with a woman and remarks that the wall would be manned by headless men. Thorne argues that there is a distinction between sneaking off to the Molestown brothel and sleeping with the enemy. The questioning of Jon occurs at a later point in the novels. Upon Jon's arrival at Castle Black, both Sir Alliser and Lord Janos were absent, as they were stationed at Eastwatch by the Sea. The role of acting Lord Commander was initially assumed by Bowen Marsh, followed by the blacksmith Donal Noy, and eventually by Janos Slint. When Sir Alliser and Lord Janos eventually interrogated Jon, Maester Aemon had already been content with his explanation. Jon refrains from defending himself in this instance. Rather, he reveals that Mance Rayder is planning to launch an assault on the Night's Watch with his massive army of 100,000 wildlings, providing valuable information on Mance's strategy. While Thorne and Slint remain skeptical of Jon's claims, Aemon acknowledges the veracity of Jon's words. The hearing concludes with Jon being spared, but Thorne makes it clear that he still harbors suspicions towards Jon after he departs. Jon refrains from defending himself in this instance. In the book, Jon estimates the wildling army to be 30 to 40,000 strong while he is traveling with them, including elderly, women, and children. Saturn, with a full view of the hoard from the top of the wall, estimates it at 100,000. While the royal wedding plans progress, Margaery Tyrell and her grandmother Olenna get interrupted by Brienne of Tarth, causing Olenna to be pleasantly surprised by the confirmation of Brienne's reputation. Brienne asks for a private conversation with Margaery in which she reveals the real circumstances of Renly's demise and swears to avenge him by ultimately seeking retribution from Stannis Baratheon, who she blames for the tragedy. As they pass by, there is a sculpture depicting King Joffrey triumphing over a slain direwolf, representing the defeat of the Northern Uprising. Diana Rigg's astonishment at Gwendoline Christie's height was completely genuine when she approached her table. Rigg knew that Gwendoline was taller than most women, but she was not prepared for just how tall she was. The producers decided to keep this surprise because it fit perfectly with her character. In the Red Keep, Jaime, Sir Meryn Trant, and King Joffrey are discussing security for the upcoming wedding. Jaime is visibly annoyed by Joffrey's arrogance and Meryn's sycophantic agreement as Joffrey boasts about keeping the people fed, which Jaime knows is the Tyrells' doing, and claims he single-handedly won the war. Jaime points out that the war is far from over since Stannis is alive and will likely raise new armies, despite Joffrey's dismissive attitude about the threat Stannis poses after losing at Blackwater. As Joffrey flips through the Book of Brothers detailing the Kingsguard's history, he mocks Jaime's brief entry, implying someone forgot to record his great deeds. He also questions whether Jaime can serve in the Kingsguard with one hand. Jaime defensively quips that using his left hand makes it more challenging. In the book, Jaime is not the one who claims that Stannis will continue fighting despite his defeat at the Blackwater, but Tywin also thinks so. He conveys this message to Pycelle during a small council meeting. Notably, Joffrey and Meryn Trant are absent from the gathering. In the White Book of the Kingsguard, Joffrey makes reference to Sir Duncan the Tall, the protagonist of George R.R. Martin's Dunk and Egg trilogy. This marks the second occasion that Duncan is mentioned in the show. Additionally, the show introduces Sir Arthur Dayne for the first time, a renowned member of the Kingsguard who bestowed knighthood upon Jaime and played a significant role in Robert's rebellion, as explored in the 6th season. During the journey to Meereen, Daenerys converses with Missandei, who warns her that Meereen should be wary of her impending arrival. Daario joins them on the cliff, presenting flowers he picked. Despite Daenerys' initial irritation, Daario explains that the flowers serve as a map of the terrain and are crucial for her strategic planning. While Daario does present Daenerys with flowers in the books as a way to showcase the country and its people, this is a regular occurrence during his daily reports to the Queen, unlike the TV show where it is depicted as a singular, specific scene. As the army stops marching, Daenerys takes the lead and stumbles upon a crucified slave child, with her hand pointing towards Meereen. Although Sir Barristan suggests sending outriders to bury them, Daenerys insists on personally overseeing the burial of each child and removing their collars, determined to honor their memory before continuing her journey. Sansa prays in the Godswood, observed by Jaime and Brienne. Brienne expects Jaime to fulfill his oath to return Catelyn Stark's daughters, but Jaime mentions the complications of Catelyn's death and Sansa's marriage to Tyrion. Jaime assumes Arya is dead since no one has seen her since her father's death. In the books, Brienne and Jaime make their way to King's Landing following Joffrey's death. While some of Jaime's storylines are adapted from the books, they are depicted much later in the series after his return. Also, Brienne is not permitted to freely roam the city. Upon her and Jaime's arrival, he orders her imprisonment for her safety, following a tense encounter with Loras, who accuses Brienne of Renly's death and plans to kill her because of Renly. Dontos Hollard approaches Sansa, thanking her for saving his life and giving her a necklace as a token of gratitude. In the books, Sansa meets Ser Dontos shortly after Joffrey's Name Day tournament in a clash of kings, receiving a hairnet instead of a necklace. Arya Stark and Sandor Clegane continue their journey through the Riverlands on a single horse. As they pass by overturned carts and deceased bodies, including those of children, Arya asks about getting her own horse and complains about the hound's smell. He dismisses the idea, mentioning the scarcity of horses and stating that he wouldn't give Arya her own horse even if one was available. As she is the only valuable thing he has since he left King's Landing, Arya reassures him that she has no intention of running away. emphasizing that she would not survive without him by nightfall, as she has nowhere else to go. The Hound reminds her of her aunt in the Vale, Lysa Arryn, to whom he plans to ransom Arya. In the novels, when Arya and the Hound arrive at the inn, Arya possesses her own horse, a mare they discovered wandering without a rider the morning after the massacre at the Twins. Arya gives her the name Craven. Upon reaching a tavern while feeling hungry, Arya proposes attacking the men inside, but the Hound hesitates due to the presence of 5 men. However, when 2 men step out to relieve themselves, Arya recognizes one of them as Polliver, the Lannister man-at-arms who had taken her sword needle and killed her friend Lomi. Seeing that Polliver still has Needle, Arya rushes to retrieve it. The Hound follows her and manages to stop her at the tavern's entrance, but they decide to enter despite being noticed. In the books, despite the absence of any individuals outside the inn, Arya hesitates to enter, fearing it may be haunted. However, the Hound insists on going inside as he seeks both refreshments and valuable information. Interestingly, Arya never discloses the existence of Lomi to him. It is evident that Polliver and his companions are causing trouble and have intentions of harming the innkeeper's daughter. In the novel, the girl sits on Polliver's lap and no one else touches her. The innkeeper does not mention the girl, and there is no indication of any familial relationship between them. Arya and the Hound decide to sit at a distant table to avoid any confrontation, but Polliver still manages to recognize the Hound and approaches their table to engage in conversation. Real chickens were prepared for the scene at the inn, as the actors needed to be depicted eating them. An excess amount was actually created, and despite the Hound's declaration that he would consume every chicken in the room, the leftovers were taken home by Maisie Williams. Rory McCann, who played the Hound, had to repeatedly empty Polliver's cup of ale during the filming, which was done approximately 12 times in rapid succession. Although it was actually coloured water and not ale, McCann ended up feeling so full after the final take that he had to step outside and vomit. The last take filmed was the one ultimately used in the episode. Despite this, Polliver fails to recognise Arya and assumes she is just another woman the Hound is involved with. Polliver hints at their plans to commit crimes on their journey back to King's Landing and invites the Hound to join them. He boasts about wearing the King's colours and having the freedom to do as they please, prompting the Hound to boldly declare, the King. The situation escalates quickly, leading to a tense standoff that results in drawing swords. Initially, the Hound takes on the 5 men alone while Arya watches from a distance. He swiftly defeats 2 of them and manages to fend off the others, injuring one in the groin. However, one of the men gains the upper hand and pins the Hound to the ground, threatening him with a dagger at his throat. Despite this, the Hound fights back fiercely, overpowering his attacker and repeatedly stabbing him in the head with his own weapon. In the books, Polliver and the Tickler briefly observe Arya, but they do not pay her any significant attention or make any offers regarding her to the Hound. It is not Polliver, but the Squire of Sarsfield, who mocks the Hound for fleeing from the Battle of the Blackwater. Arya subsequently enters the battle, forcefully striking one of the men with a pot and thrusting him with his own longsword. She proceeds to cut Polliver's leg from behind, causing him to collapse onto the ground. Retrieving Needle from Polliver, Arya positions herself above his defenseless body. She repeats the words he had uttered to Lomi before ending his life, although Polliver remains oblivious to her identity and the meaning behind her words. It is only when Arya echoes his previous statement about Needle that Polliver finally recognizes her and succumbs to fear. In a manner mirroring his own actions, Arya slowly drives Needle into Polliver's throat, ultimately killing him. Subsequently, Arya and the Hound depart from the tavern, taking a horse for Arya and a chicken for the Hound. In the books, Arya Stark's act of killing Polliver combines elements from 3 different deaths in the books. Polliver took Needle from Arya, while it was Raff who killed Lomi by thrusting a spear through his neck. The Tickler, on the other hand, was the main torturer at Harrenhal. In the TV series, the Tickler is killed by Jaqen H'ghar, but in the books, Arya has Jaqen H'ghar kill another guard named Chiswick. Additionally, in the books, Arya fights against 3 men,
namely Polliver, the Tickler, and their squire, whereas in the TV series, it is Sandor who kills Polliver, while Arya kills the Tickler. Arya's killing of the Tickler is done in a frenzied manner, repeatedly stabbing him while sarcastically shouting the questions he used to interrogate innocent prisoners with during his torturous acts. The Tickler's cruelty lies in the fact that he knew there was no hidden gold but still tortured people. Arya continues stabbing him until Sandor physically intervenes and pulls her away from his lifeless body. It is worth noting that Sandor himself sustains severe injuries during the fight. In a separate scene, Arya kills Raff, the man who killed Lomi in the books, by placing him in the same position Lomi was in when he was brutally killed. Arya stabs Raff in the leg, causing him to beg her to take him to a healer. She then sarcastically quotes the cruel taunt he made to Lomi before killing him and proceeds to stab him through the throat. As Raff's role was combined with Polliver in the TV series, Polliver is the one who meets his demise at Arya's hands as described in the books. In the woodlands encircling the Dreadfort, the ancestral home of House Bolton, Ramsay Snow embarks on a cruel hunt for a common girl, purely for his sadistic pleasure. Theon Greyjoy, now known as Reek, and Miranda join him in this gruesome pursuit, accompanied by a pack of ferocious hounds. Eventually the girl is captured and mercilessly torn apart by the savage dogs, leaving Reek horrified by the gruesome spectacle. Ramsay's hunt for a girl in the woods in the opening scene is considerably less graphic in the TV series compared to the books. In the books, Ramsay typically the women he captures during his hunts and either gives them a quick death or flays them alive based on their performance. This brutal behavior is hinted at in the TV series through Ramsay's dialogue with Miranda. During a meal, Jaime and Tyrion engage in a conversation about Jaime's gilded steel hand. Jaime confesses to Tyrion that he is unable to fight anymore, as his left hand throws off all his instincts. In the book, Jaime's hand is crafted from solid gold, unlike the gold-plated steel hand depicted in the TV series. This revelation troubles Jaime as he fears that people will discover his inability to fight. Jaime accidentally knocks over a glass with his golden hand twice during meals in the books, but not in Tyrion's presence. In response, Tyrion advises him to train with someone trustworthy who can help him improve his skills with his left hand, emphasizing the importance of protecting the king as the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. The conversation between Jaime and Tyrion does not take place in the books. Later, Jaime waits in a courtyard by the sea for his designated training partner arranged by Tyrion. To his surprise, Bronn appears with 2 training swords. Jaime mentions that he hasn't sparred with a sword since he was 9 years old. As their training begins, Bronn employs his usual underhanded tactics and gains the upper hand over Jaime. Not only does Bronn teach Jaime to utilize his offhand, but he also encourages him to fight more ruthlessly. In the books, it is Jaime's friend Adam Marbrand and later Ilan Payne who train him to use his left hand because Payne can't speak or write. Shortly thereafter, Roose Bolton arrives at the Dreadfort with a detachment of his army, accompanied by Locke and his new wife, Walder Bolton. Ramsay warmly welcomes his father and stepmother, while privately commending Locke for his brutal disfigurement of the renowned Kingslayer. Roose expresses his desire to meet Ramsay's captive, Theon Greyjoy. In the books, Roose Bolton does not sneak into the north to reach the Dreadfort. Instead, he remains with his main army, which travels north from the Twins but is unable to pass through Moat Cailin. It has been verified that the Ironborn are in control of Moat Cailin, a castle located in the Neck, a narrow stretch of marshland that separates the north from the rest of Westeros. The castle guards the only road that crosses through the Neck, making it a strategic defensive position against potential attacks from the south. In the TV series, Roose presumably bypasses the Neck by crossing the Bight on a boat and then traveling north to the Dreadfort in order to make his way back home. As a result, the Bolton army remains stuck in the Neck. In the books, Roose is still accompanying his army and is bringing back the fake Arya Stark with him that Ramsay will marry. Theon is escorted to Roose's chambers, where Roose is filled with disgust and anger upon discovering that Ramsay has subjected Theon to torture and flaying. As the only surviving male heir of Balon Greyjoy, Theon was a valuable hostage. Roose acknowledges that despite being appointed as Warden of the North, he cannot rely on Tywin Lannister's assistance in reclaiming the North from the Ironborn. Initially, Roose had planned to exchange Theon for control of Moat Cailin,
Ramsay counters by stating that he had already proposed terms to Balin, but Balin rejected them. This revelation infuriates Roose, as Ramsay acted without his consent. However, Ramsay proves that his actions have rendered Theon submissive and incapable of betraying them. After instructing Reek to shave him, Ramsay persuades him to confess that Bran and Rickon Stark are still alive. Ramsay points out to his father that the boys are now the rightful heirs to House Stark's control of the North after Robb Stark's demise. He emphasizes that most Northerners who are outraged by the betrayal of House Bolton and House Frey against the Starks will support Bran and Rickon over Roose if they discover that the boys are alive. Ramsay, aware of Theon's close relationship with Robb, mocks him by disclosing details of the Red Wedding, taking pleasure in the fact that it was Roose who personally killed Robb. Despite being visibly disturbed by the news of the death of the man he once considered a brother at the hands of his captors, Theon does not show any outward reaction. Despite not being mentioned in the show, Roose Bolton was originally planned to have a legitimate son named Domeric, who passed away in the past. This detail would have clarified why Roose maintains a close relationship with his illegitimate son, Ramsay, despite their contentious dynamic. In various behind-the-scenes features and interviews, George R.R. Martin, the Ramsay and Roose actor, have indirectly referred to Domeric, indicating that the character was likely intended to be included in the series, but was ultimately omitted. Deleted dialogue from the official game, Game of Thrones, a Telltale game series, has Ramsay explicitly mentioning Domeric's demise, albeit in a mocking manner that suggests his involvement. In the books, Domeric's death is attributed to a bowel disease, yet rumors circulate that a jealous Ramsay may have secretly poisoned him. Roose sends Locke on a mission to locate and eliminate Bran and Rickon. Reek proposes that Jon Snow might be harboring the boys at Castle Black, or at least have knowledge of their whereabouts, while Ramsay suggests killing Jon as a precaution, as his Stark lineage could pose a threat. Roose also gives Ramsay his own set of instructions, to lead an army with Theon to Moat Cailin and recapture the stronghold from the Greyjoys. If successful, Roose will consider legitimizing Ramsay as a true member of House Bolton. In the books, Cersei conspired to have Jon Snow killed, not the Boltons. However, this plan never comes to fruition. In the books, Ramsay does not form a friendship with Vargo Hoat, Locke's counterpart in the books. Vargo Hoat, Locke's book equivalent, never visits the Dreadfort in the novels. Meanwhile, Tyrion encounters Varys on his way to a breakfast celebration on the day of Joffrey's wedding. Varys reveals that Shae has been spotted and that Cersei has been informed. Varys expresses his inability to protect Shae any longer due to the fear of Tywin Lannister or Cersei discovering his lies. Tyrion asserts that Shae will not leave King's Landing. During the morning feast, Mace Tyrell presents Joffrey with a splendid golden chalice adorned with 7 facets, symbolizing the major houses of the 7 kingdoms, and wishes him and Margaery Tyrell a joyous and enduring union. Joffrey graciously accepts the gift. Cersei notices Shae's presence and informs Tywin that she is Tyrion's paramour, leading to Tywin ordering her confinement in the Tower of the Hand before the wedding. Tyrion overhears this exchange, appearing perturbed, but proceeds to approach Joffrey. In the books, the breakfast takes place in the Queen's ballroom, not outdoors. Tyrion is not forewarned about Cersei discovering Shae's true identity as a prostitute and his lover in the books, so he does not arrange for her to be sent away to Pentos or elsewhere. There are significantly more guests attending the breakfast in the books than in the TV series. Podrick Payne, Tyrion's squire, offers Joffrey The Lives of 4 Kings, a book chronicling the reigns of 4 monarchs by Grand Maester Kayeth. Joffrey accepts the book, though his gratitude seems dubious. In the books, Joffrey does not show gratitude for Tyrion's wedding gift. Instead, he crudely suggests that Tyrion's love for books has rendered him impotent, and publicly declares his intentions to bed Sansa in the future. It is Joffrey's great-uncle Kevan, not Tyrion, who recommends the book as essential reading for all kings. In the books, after obliterating the book with his new Valyrian sword, Joffrey is informed by Garland Tyrell that the book was one of only 4 known original copies. He simply sneers that now there are only 3 copies. Oberyn reveals that he was once fortunate enough to view another of the originals while studying at the Citadel, and is particularly disgusted by Joffrey's senseless destruction of a treasured artifact.
A member of the Kingsguard then presents a Valyrian steel sword, which Tywin reveals to be one of 2 such swords in the capital. Joffrey eagerly seizes the sword and begins to wield it, recklessly slashing at Tyrion's gift before seeking suggestions for its name from the assembled guests. Ultimately, he decides on the name Widow's Wail. Joffrey receives multiple suggestions for the name of his new sword. The initial suggestion that resonates with the crowd is Stormbringer. In the books, Joffrey carelessly wields his new sword, causing some knights to step back. Sir Adam Marbrand, not Pycelle, advises Joffrey to handle Valyrian steel with caution, eliciting his response, "I'm no stranger to Valyrian steel." This remark, along with Joffrey's reaction to Tyrion's suggestion of carrying a Valyrian steel knife to accompany it, leads Tyrion to suspect Joffrey's involvement in the assassination plot on Bran. He then worries that Joffrey may try to have him killed to keep the secret. Upon receiving a new Valyrian steel sword, Tyrion realizes that Tywin had ice, the Stark's ancestral greatsword, melted down and reforged. Tyrion regrets not returning the sword to the Starks when they requested it. Following the breakfast, Shae visits Tyrion in his chambers, prompting him to inform her of a ship waiting to transport her to Pentos and declaring an end to their relationship. Recognizing Shae's determination to remain despite the danger, Tyrion harshly rejects her in a bid to compel her departure from King's Landing for her own safety. Despite the emotional toll on both of them, he cruelly labels her a mere prostitute, incapable of love. When Bronn intervenes to escort her away, Shae reacts with a slap before fleeing, consumed by anger and heartbreak. Later, Tyrion inquires if she has left, to which Bronn confirms her departure on the ship. Assured that no one has observed her exit except for themselves and Varys, Bronn advises Tyrion to drown his sorrows in drink until he can convince himself that his actions were justified. Shae does not attend the wedding in the books. She seeks permission from Sansa, but Tyrion denies her request. On the shores of Dragonstone, Melisandre oversees a public burning ceremony where 3 individuals are chained to stakes and set ablaze as an offering to the Lord of Light. Among the condemned is Queen Selyse Baratheon's brother, Axel Florent, who is executed for his lack of faith in the Lord's power. In the books, Alistair Florent is the uncle, not the brother of Queen Selyse. Sir Davos Seaworth silently observes the ritual, his disdain for both the ceremony and Melisandre evident. Selyse takes great pleasure in the event. Later, Stannis and Selyse dine together, with Melisandre joining them at the table. The royal couple argue about their daughter, Princess Shireen Baratheon. Selyse believes her disfigurement is a punishment from the Lord of Light, but Stannis vehemently opposes any physical punishment for their daughter. Selyse then suggests that Melisandre speak to Shireen instead. Stannis does not object, but Melisandre does not appear particularly enthusiastic about the idea. In the books, Selyse never mentions Shireen, whether with affection or criticism. However, Melisandre does have a conversation with Shireen, who overhears her uncle's death from her bedroom window. Melisandre calmly and straightforwardly explains that the faith of the Seven and its sacred texts are falsehoods. She firmly believes that there are only 2 deities, the Lord of Light and the Great Other, engaged in an eternal conflict. When Shireen inquires about the validity of the faith's belief in 7 heavens and 7 hells, Melisandre responds, "There is only one hell, the one we currently live in." We observe the perspective of an exhausted individual traversing a dim, snow-laden forest. This person proceeds to hunt down and slay a deer. However, as the deed is done, it is unveiled that the individual in question is Summer, and that Bran Stark had been warging into Summer. Meera Reed interrupts Bran's warging, informing him that he had been absent for hours. Bran expresses his displeasure at being abruptly pulled out of his warging, claiming that he was in the midst of eating. Jojen Reed clarifies that it was Summer who was consuming, and that Bran cannot derive sustenance from Summer's meals. Jojen and Meera caution Bran about the dangers of warging for extended periods. Although it grants Bran the mobility he lost due to his injury, it also poses the risk of him becoming trapped, forgetting his loved ones, his home, and even his own identity. If Bran loses himself, they all stand to lose everything. The group dismantles their camp and continues their journey through the forest. Eventually, they stumble upon a weirwood tree. Bran instructs Hodor to guide him to the tree. Placing his hand just below the carved face on the tree, Bran makes contact and experiences a vision. A multitude of images flood Bran's mind.
including flocks of crows, both human and equine whites, and the fall that left him paralyzed. He also witnesses the three-eyed raven soaring through a darkened passageway and later perching on a tree. Bran witnesses his father sharpening ice in the black cells, being led to his execution, the Red Keep deserted and blanketed in snow, and the silhouette of a dragon soaring above King's Landing. Additionally, Bran sees numerous images of a distinct weirwood tree situated atop an otherwise desolate mountain. Amidst the vision, a gravelly voice instructs Bran to seek me beneath the tree, north. Bran emerges from the vision breathless, but then calmly declares, "I know where we must go." It has been verified by George R.R. Martin that each of the 6 Stark children possesses the ability to wog, albeit with different levels of conscious control. While all wogs are considered skin changers, it is important to note that not all skin changers are wogs. The term wog specifically refers to individuals who have formed a bond with a wolf. Joffrey and Margaery's nuptials are held in the Great Sept of Baelor under the guidance of the High Septon, with the couple exchanging vows in the presence of both gods and men. During the wedding celebration, King Joffrey addresses the attendees on the topic of reflecting on history. In the book, Margaery does not aim to distribute all the excess food from the wedding to the common people. On the contrary, Tyrion reflects that the citizens would revolt once more if they witnessed the extravagant amount of food the nobles had readied for the wedding. As part of the festivities, 5 dwarves emerge from a large golden lion symbolizing Joffrey, Renly Baratheon, Stannis Baratheon, Robb Stark, and Balon Greyjoy, the 5 contenders in the War of the 5 Kings. The dwarves engage in a performance involving jousting, combat, and lewd acts, much to the amusement of Joffrey, his brother Tommen, and Cersei. Dean Charles Chapman made his debut as Tommen Baratheon, taking over the role from Callum Worry, who portrayed the character in the first 2 seasons. As Tommen's character became more prominent in Season 4, the decision was made to bring in a more experienced actor. Chapman had appeared as Tommen's cousin, Martin Lannister, in Season 3. When the decision was made to recast Tommen, Chapman happened to be available and was deemed to be a suitable choice. However, the Tyrells, Margaery, Olenna, Mace, and Loras, Prince Oberyn, Tywin, Tyrion, and Sansa Stark, do little to conceal their revulsion. Loras storms off in anger after witnessing the disrespectful betrayal of his late lover Renly, depicted riding a horse resembling Loras, while Sansa watches in sorrow as the dwarf representing her brother Robb is slain after his wolf's head is removed. In the books, Loras remains at the wedding throughout. Neither Joffrey nor Cersei ever conversed with Brienne in the books. Various people unjustly accuse Brienne of Renly's death, but Joffrey is not among them. In the books, Jaime and Brienne do not attend the wedding, as they return to King's Landing after Joffrey's death. Joffrey praises the performance and intends to reward the champion dwarf, but then mockingly suggests a fight between Tyrion and the dwarf instead. Tyrion cleverly turns the tables by proposing that Joffrey should engage in the combat, reminding him of the valor he exhibited during the Battle of the Blackwater and warning him about the champion dwarf's questionable intentions. This witty exchange elicits a few subdued laughs from the audience. Infuriated and embarrassed by his uncle's clever retort in front of the guests, Joffrey spitefully pours wine over Tyrion's head and demands that he serve as his cupbearer. Tyrion walks up to Joffrey, who deliberately drops the goblet and kicks it under the table. Sansa passes the goblet to Tyrion, who fills it with wine and hands it back to Joffrey. The king insists that Tyrion kneel before him, but Tyrion declines. The sequence in which Joffrey requests Tyrion to fetch his beverage right before consuming his fatal gulp had to undergo multiple retakes. Peter Dinklage and Lena Headey couldn't help but burst into laughter whenever Jack Gleeson delivered the line, "Hurry up, this pie is dry," as they perceived it as a suggestive innuendo. When Joffrey is given the chalice with the sigils of the 7 Westerosi great houses, he remarks, "A splendid cup, but we'll need to chip the wolf off and put a squid in its place," clearly intending to hurt Sansa by reminding her of her family's downfall and the Ironborn's invasion of the North. Littlefinger, as he disclosed to Sansa later, is the one who orchestrated the dwarf show. Joffrey was not enthusiastic about the idea until Littlefinger pointed out it would embarrass Tyrion. Littlefinger arranges for only 2 dwarf jousters, one sitting atop a dog and the other a sow, instead of 5. One mocking Robb and the other mocking Stannis. In the TV series, they simply have fake mounts attached to their costumes. Benioff and Weiss explained that they actually wanted to use the pigs, but when they inquired, were told that this would be considered animal cruelty, and thus they legally could not do it. In the books, the event was meant to offend only Tyrion and Sansa, and most of the wedding guests were laughing. There was no dwarf playing Renly in the book, and therefore Loras does not storm away in anger. In the books, when Joffrey proposes that Tyrion should face the dwarf champion, Tyrion doesn't mock his brave behavior at the Blackwater battle. Instead, he retorts, "I'll ride the pig, but only if you ride the dog." Confused, Joffrey insists he's not a dwarf and questions why Tyrion chose him, falling right into Tyrion's trap. Tyrion responds, "Why, you're the only man in the hall that I'm certain of defeating." This causes most of the crowd to burst into laughter, much to Tyrion's delight, while Joffrey and Cersei seethe with anger. Margaery interrupts the tense situation and suggests it is time to serve the pigeon pie. Joffrey gives the goblet to Margaery, who places it near her grandmother Olenna. Joffrey unsheathes his new sword, cuts the pie, and a flock of white doves fly out. Sansa and Tyrion try to exit the feast, while Margaery offers Joffrey a slice of pie. Joffrey orders Tyrion to pour him wine to accompany the pie. Tyrion gives the goblet to Joffrey, who hastily drinks all of it. Joffrey attempts to speak, but starts coughing. He clutches his throat, and Margaery and Olenna shout that he is choking and requires assistance. During the wedding ceremony, as the High Septon utters the words, "Cursed be he who would seek to tear them asunder," Olenna Tyrell makes a subtle appearance beside Margaery, hinting at her involvement in Joffrey's demise. It is quite ironic, considering her later conversation with Sansa at the feast regarding the atrocity of killing a man during a wedding. If one observes closely while she speaks to Sansa, her right hand, except for the index finger, forms a loose fist and moves towards her hip, resembling a magician or thief palming something, after fiddling with Sansa's necklace. Subsequently, the necklace is missing a stone in all following scenes. The production team was initially meant to replace the necklace with one missing a stone, but they overlooked it, resulting in the stone having to be digitally erased from all shots. Joffrey falls face first, starts vomiting and convulsing, clearly in intense pain. Jaime and Cersei hurry over, turning Joffrey onto his back. Dontos Hollard suddenly appears behind Sansa and quietly tells her she must leave with him immediately, and she complies. In the books, Sansa had already received guidance from Dontos to flee, rendering Dontos' assistance unnecessary. Garland Tyrell is the first to come to Joffrey's aid when he collapses, swiftly followed by Osmond Kettleblack and Meryn Trant. In the literary version, amidst the chaos, Tyrion seizes the wedding chalice, which still holds a portion of wine. After contemplating for a moment, Tyrion proceeds to empty the chalice for reasons unknown. As Joffrey struggles for breath, he desperately scratches at his throat in a gruesome manner, leaving behind bloody gashes. However, in the television adaptation, Joffrey briefly claws at his throat, but the act is significantly less violent compared to the books. Joffrey points an accusing finger towards Tyrion as he inspects the wine goblet, although it is uncertain if Joffrey is accusing Tyrion or the wine itself. Joffrey's eyes turn red, blood trickles from his nose, he stops convulsing, and passes away. Cersei weeps in sorrow and commands the Kingsguard to apprehend Tyrion for allegedly poisoning her son. Joffrey's nuptials have been famously dubbed by enthusiasts as the Purple Wedding, alluding to the poison-laced wine that led to Joffrey's demise and the purple crystals adorning Sansa's unique hairnet gifted by Ser Dontos. This moniker has gained widespread recognition to the extent that both George R.R. Martin and the HBO crew have acknowledged its usage. In the books, during Joffrey's death, the attendees become frantic and numerous individuals run away. However, in the television adaptation, they remain in place and observe his demise. George R.R. Martin's initial vision was for this to be a self-contained episode centered solely on the royal wedding in King's Landing, similar to Blackwater. Nevertheless, the showrunners managed to persuade him that there were various other storylines that needed to be addressed urgently. However, the plotlines of Daenerys, Jon, the Wildlings were not included. George R.R. Martin has stated that he drew inspiration from the demise of Prince Eustace of Boulogne in 1153 for Joffrey's fatal incident during his wedding feast. The historical event involved Prince Eustace choking on his food during dinner. This episode was honoured with an Emmy Award for its exceptional costumes. After the demise of King Joffrey, Cersei grieves for her eldest son while cradling his lifeless body. In her sorrow, she demands the capture of Sansa Stark, the person she believes to be responsible for Joffrey's death. To ensure that no one escapes, her father orders the capital to be sealed off. Sansa manages to escape King's Landing with Ser Dontos Hollard, and they make their way to a ship waiting off the coast. As Sansa boards the ship, she is greeted by Lord Baelish. Littlefinger recalls that he still owes Dontos his payment, but instead of fulfilling his promise, he orders 2 men to kill him using crossbows. Littlefinger explains to Sansa that Ser Dontos was nothing more than a drunken fool and an unreliable ally who only helped her for money and would betray her for money as well. To prove his point, he reveals that the precious necklace Dontos had given her was actually commissioned by Baelish himself a few weeks ago. Sansa is left feeling confused and horrified, but Baelish assures her that he will protect her and keep her safe. In the books, Dontos meets his end with 3 crossbow bolts striking his chest, throat, and belly. Following this, Lothar Brune ignites the body with a burning torch, leaving no trace behind. Upon returning to King's Landing, Margaery Tyrell finds herself stunned by the deadly consequences of her Black Widow kiss. With Renly and now Joffrey meeting their demise, it's understandable that potential suitors might be wary. Olenna provides some comforting words, reminding Margaery that the world is filled with terrible things, but death surpasses them all. She also points out that witnessing Joffrey's death may not have been pleasant, but it's preferable to being married to him. The exchange between Olenna and Margaery is not featured in the novels. Meanwhile, Prince Tommen Baratheon pays his respects to his deceased brother within the solemn halls of the Great Sept of Baelor. Jack Gleeson's final portrayal of Joffrey marked his last appearance on the show. Interestingly, the scene depicting his lifeless body lying in state was actually filmed prior to his death scene in the previous episode. Gleeson himself described this experience as wonderful, as he was essentially compensated for a full day of filming by simply taking a nap. Following his departure from the show, Gleeson chose to distance himself from acting, making only sporadic appearances in movies and series. Tywin Lannister, present at the scene, wastes no time in imparting his wisdom about the qualities of a worthy ruler to the young prince. Tywin never engages in a conversation with Tommen regarding the qualities of a good king in the books. As Tywin and Tommen depart, Jaime enters and finds Cersei passionately calling for the execution of Tyrion and Sansa Stark. Seeking solace, Jaime dismisses the Septon and Septars, allowing him to be alone with Cersei. Despite her initial resistance, Jaime's advances become forceful. Cersei protests, deeming their intimate encounter within the Sept, where their son's body lies, highly inappropriate. She implores Jaime to stop, insisting that it is wrong. However, Jaime remains unyielding, declaring that he doesn't care. In a disturbing turn of events, they engage in sexual activity beside their deceased child. The depiction of Jaime and Cersei's sexual encounter in the Great Sept received severe criticism due to the recurring portrayal of in the series. This criticism was particularly strong because, in the books, the encounter was consensual. One critic even expressed feeling exhausted by the constant use of this narrative device to shock viewers. In the novels, Jaime is still on his way to King's Landing when Joffrey dies. Upon his return, he immediately goes to the Great Sept, where he reunites with Cersei for the first time, leading to their passionate encounter. Martin clarified that Cersei's protests in the particular scene were mainly about the inappropriate setting and timing, but she was equally desirous of Jaime. He expressed regret that the scene disturbed people for the wrong reasons. The cast, director Alex Graves, and the showrunners refrained from commenting on the controversy for a long time. Eventually, they stated that the scene was never intended to be scripted or portrayed as but rather as an expression of grief. However, due to unclear shots and editing, it unintentionally appeared as a It is worth noting that Graves, who was also the editor, did not return as a director after season 4. Although it has not been confirmed whether this controversy played a role in his departure. In the meantime, Arya Stark and the Hound traverse the Riverlands and catch the attention of a farmer and his young daughter as they make their way towards the Vale, where Arya can be exchanged for a hefty ransom from her wealthy aunt, Lysa Arryn. Arya and the Hound's decision to bypass Fairmarket and head towards the Vale suggests that they are intentionally avoiding the direct path along the King's Road. Instead, they are choosing to travel through the Riverlands to evade any potential Lannister patrols searching for them. This strategic choice also accounts for the extended duration of their journey to the Vale. Arya swiftly concocts a tale portraying the Hound as her father and Clegane as a knight in the service of House Tully. The farmer falls for the deception and offers them shelter for the night, along with a meal. Ravenous, Arya and the Hound devour the food hastily. The next morning, Arya is awakened by the screams of the farmer's daughter. Clegane has attacked the farmer and stolen his silver. Confused and horrified, Arya demands an explanation from Clegane. He coldly responds, "A dead man has no use for silver," asserting that the farmer is feeble, and he and his daughter will not survive the impending winter. In the book, Arya and the Hound spend some time in a small village. The Hound compensates the villagers with his labor. Once the work is completed, the Hound receives his payment before departing with Arya. He does not harm any of the villagers. The characters of Sally and her father are absent from the novels. A village located south of the protective wall has fallen victim to a brutal attack orchestrated by marauding wildlings led by Tormund and the savage Thenns. In the midst of the devastating massacre, a young boy is entrusted by Styr to carry a crucial message to Castle Black. This message not only details the horrifying events of the attack, but also serves as a dire warning that further atrocities are imminent. Jon concurs with Alyssa Thorne's choice to withhold assistance from the individuals residing in the Gift who are being targeted by the Wildlings' raids. He firmly believes that the Wildlings' intention is to entice a significant number of Night's Watch members out of Castle Black in order to execute a comprehensive assault. This scenario is precisely depicted in the book, where only a small faction of men remain stationed at Castle Black, while the majority is drawn away to confront the Wildlings' attack on the Bridge of Skulls near the Shadow Tower in the Western region. Brennock O'Connor made his debut as Ollie, a character created specifically for the series. Initially intended for a single episode, the producers decided to retain him by integrating him into the Night's Watch. Consequently, his character was combined with Saturn from the source material, ultimately becoming Jon Snow's personal attendant. Within the confines of Castle Black, Samwell Tarly finds himself consumed by worry for the safety of Gilly. Taking decisive action, he arranges for her relocation to a nearby vassal town. Known for catering to the physical desires of the Night's Watch brothers, Sam is unwavering in his determination to shield Gilly from any harm that may befall her. He solemnly vows to visit her as frequently as possible, ensuring that the inn where he leaves her understands the strict instruction that she is to remain untouched. The conversation between Sam and Gilly does not take place in the books, and Sam never sends Gilly to Molestown. At this point in Jon's journey, Sam and Gilly are still traveling, while the Night's Watch is enlisting refugees from Molestown to bolster their ranks. By the time they arrive at Castle Black, Molestown has been deserted, and they do not pass through it. Dragonstone appears gloomy and rainy once again. Stannis is troubled by the news of Joffrey's death, suspecting that Melisandre's leech curse may have been the cause. In the books, Davos is the one who informs Stannis and Melisandre about Joffrey's demise. Despite Davos rallying houses to Stannis' side, Davos engages in a reading lesson with Stannis' daughter Shireen. The Iron Bank of Braavos is brought up, prompting Davos to come up with a clever plan involving Shireen drafting a letter on behalf of her father. It remains to be seen how the Iron Bank will react to receiving a letter supposedly penned by Stannis himself. The books do not mention any instance where Davos was nearly executed by a First Sword of Braavos. During an episode, Davos reveals that he has successfully gained the support of 3 minor houses for Stannis: House Peasbury, House Musgood, and House Hay. Stannis dismisses their significance, claiming that their combined forces are insufficient even to raid a pantry. In the books, House Peasbury is indeed one of the few houses from the Stormlands that remains loyal to Stannis. However, House Musgood is not mentioned as supporting him, and House Hay is actually a minor house sworn to House Frey. The Hays fought alongside the Freys during the Red Wedding and continued to serve in Frey armies under the Lannisters. It is therefore peculiar that the TV adaptation portrays them as supporting Stannis, especially considering the success achieved by the Lannister-Frey-Bolton alliance. In the book, Davos refrains from sending any correspondence to the Iron Bank seeking financial assistance, nor does he propose the recruitment of the Golden Company. Instead, it is Tycho Nestoris who engages in negotiations with Stannis after Cersei declines to fulfill the crown's debt to the Iron Bank. However, this occurrence takes place at a much later time. During this period, Stannis does not abstain from hiring sellswords due to financial constraints, but rather because it contradicts his principles. Once Tycho Nestoris provides him with the necessary funds through a loan, Stannis instructs one of his trusted subordinates to journey to Braavos and enlist sellswords, preferably from the Golden Company. The interaction between Davos and Shireen is not depicted in the novels. Tywin interrupts Oberyn Martell and his group's intimate gathering with Ellaria Sand and Oliver to discuss Tyrion's upcoming trial for Joffrey's murder. According to Pedro Pascal, one of the actresses portraying a prostitute in the brothel scene chose not to wear her robes in between takes. This is a common occurrence as many actresses feel more uncomfortable constantly undressing in front of the crew than being nude itself. However, what surprised Pascal the most was the extensive amount of time it took to film this scene, and the actress never once put on any clothing, even during longer breaks. At one point, he discovered her completely naked in the green room, engrossed in a game of Words with Friends on her phone alongside showrunner David Benioff. Sitting nearby was a slightly embarrassed Charles Dance, unsure of where to direct his gaze. Tywin mentions Oberyn's expertise in poisons and the suspicion surrounding Joffrey's death, hinting at Oberyn's possible involvement. While it is true that Oberyn had pursued studies to become a maester during his youth, successfully acquiring several links for his chain, it is worth noting that his expertise in the art of poisoning was acquired during his travels across the Free Cities, not at the Citadel as depicted in the show. The conversation shifts to the tragic death of Oberyn's sister, Elia, at the hands of the Mountain during the sack of King's Landing. Despite denying any involvement in her murder, Tywin offers Oberyn a chance to seek justice by arranging a meeting with the Mountain. Tywin vehemently denies Oberyn's accusation of ordering the Mountain to and murder Elia, claiming that soldiers often commit atrocities in war without their superiors' knowledge. This denial could be interpreted as an indirect admission of guilt, as Tywin previously reprimanded Tyrion for the actions of his hill tribesmen, stating that a lack of discipline among soldiers reflects poorly on their commander. Despite this, Tywin failed to discipline the Mountain and continued to employ him, effectively condoning his actions. While Tywin did order the deaths of Elia's children to demonstrate loyalty to Robert Baratheon, he claims he did not intend for Elia to be harmed, simply forgetting to instruct the Mountain to spare her. Oberyn, however, suspects that Tywin may have explicitly ordered Elia's and murder as an act of revenge against the Mad King for choosing Elia over Cersei as a wife for Rhaegar. There is no account in the books of Tywin engaging in a private conversation with Oberyn regarding Elia's murder. In fact, they never exchange words in the books. Nor does he propose arranging a confidential meeting between Oberyn and Gregor Clegane. In the books, Tywin informs Tyrion after a small council meeting, the same one where they learned about the Red Wedding, that he has no intention of upholding Tyrion's previous agreement with House Martell. This agreement involved handing over Gregor Clegane to face justice and honouring Myrcella's betrothal in exchange for Dorne's support in the War of the Five Kings. Tywin reveals that he considers Clegane too valuable to be given away. He further explains that his plan is to keep Clegane away from King's Landing as long as Oberyn is in the city. If Oberyn insists on pursuing the matter, Tywin would shift the blame for the murders of Elia and her children onto the deceased Amry Lorch. Additionally, Tywin proposes a seat on the small council for Oberyn, provided he serves as the third judge at Tyrion's trial. Tywin emphasizes the importance of uniting the Seven Kingdoms against looming threats, such as the Greyjoy Rebellion, the Wildling Army, and the Targaryen girl with dragons in the east. In the book, Tywin does not view the wildlings and the Ironborn as enemies. In fact, he is pleased to learn from reports that they are currently engaged in battles against the people of the North. Reflecting on history, Tywin acknowledges the Dornish resistance against Aegon Targaryen's dragons, prompting Oberyn to dryly remark on Tywin's need for Dornish assistance. Instead of engaging in direct warfare, the Dornish employed guerrilla tactics to disrupt the Targaryen armies. This allowed them to maintain their independence for a significant period before eventually joining the other kingdoms through marriage. Additionally, the existence of Daenerys' dragons is largely disregarded as mere rumors. Tywin's primary objective is to secure Dorne's loyalty and prevent them from aligning with Stannis. Oberyn alludes to a belief that the sky appears blue because humans reside within the eye of a colossal being. This reference harkens back to a scene in Season 1's Lord Snow, where Robb recounts a tale from Old Nan to Bran, suggesting that the sky's hue is due to inhabiting the eye of a blue-eyed giant named Macumba. It is worth noting that this myth does not appear in any of the books. Tyrion finds himself confined in a cell within the walls of King's Landing. His loyal squire, Podrick Payne, manages to sneak in some much-needed sustenance and other supplies for him. In addition to this, Pod has been tasked with compiling a list of potential witnesses for Tyrion. Initially, he mentions Tyrion's wife, Sansa, but sadly informs him that she vanished shortly after Joffrey's demise. Bronn, another close associate of Tyrion, is also off-limits for discussion. Tyrion is relieved to hear that there has been no news of Shae, interpreting it as a positive sign. Seeking solace and companionship, Tyrion requests to speak with his brother Jaime. However, he cautions Pod to remain vigilant and cautious of their surroundings, as there are spies lurking about, belonging to the likes of Tywin, Cersei, Varys, or anyone else for that matter. Tyrion believes that numerous individuals had motives to kill Joffrey, except for Cersei, whom he excludes from the list. Concerned for Pod's safety due to their close association, especially after Pod's refusal to testify against Tyrion despite the tempting offer of knighthood, Tyrion urges him to leave King's Landing promptly. Just as Pod is about to depart, Tyrion calls him back and expresses his unwavering loyalty, stating that there has never been a more faithful squire. Upon his arrest in the books, Tyrion is handled with care, a common practice for highborn prisoners, and is merely confined to his quarters instead of being thrown into the black cells. In the novels, Kevin, not Pod, informs Tyrion about the judges. When Tyrion questions Pod about his thoughts on whether he killed Joffrey, Pod hesitates and attempts to speak, but only manages a feeble sputter. This adds to Tyrion's despair, yet he expresses gratitude to Pod for his loyal service. Upon receiving news of the Wildlings' attacks in the southern regions, the Lord Commander acknowledges the lack of manpower to venture away from the wall. However, their conversation is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Ed and Gren, who have successfully escaped from Craster's Keep. Jon discloses that he informed Mance Rayder about the 1,000 men guarding Castle Black, emphasizing that once Mance reaches Craster's Keep, Rast and Khal Tanner will undoubtedly expose the truth. Consequently, Jon strongly urges the Night's Watch to dispatch a party to Craster's Keep in order to eliminate their treacherous brethren before Mance reaches them. Gren, Ed, and several others have remained loyal to Mormont. They have managed to return to Castle Black before Jon in the novels. There is no mention of them being chained up after the mutiny. They simply escape without engaging in a fight due to being outnumbered by the mutineers. This adjustment is likely made to address the time gap resulting from stretching the third novel's plot over 2 seasons. The mutiny at Craster's Keep occurs in the middle of the third novel. However, the TV series needed to provide an explanation for their absence during a full season. Jon never suggests marching on Craster's Keep to confront the mutineers, either before or after the Battle of Castle Black, as the Free Folk and Thens were already launching attacks on Castle Black. In the region of Slaver's Bay, Daenerys Targaryen proceeds towards the city of Meereen, commencing her assault on the slave city. A challenge arises in the form of a duel proposed by a knight from Meereen, who offers her the opportunity to select a champion to fight on her behalf. Despite Grey Worm, Jorah, and Barristan volunteering to stand as her champion, she deems them too valuable to risk and declines their offers. However, Dario Naharis, the leader of the Second Sons, steps forward and offers himself as Dani's champion, which she accepts. With swift precision, Naharis defeats the Myrrhine champion by slaying the champion's horse. Following this victory, Dani initiates her siege of the city by addressing the gathered slaves, speaking of freedom, and symbolically launching the broken chains of those she has liberated over the city walls, showcasing her previous triumphs. As the slaves examine the shattered chains, the great masters observe, possibly filled with apprehension. During her address to the slaves in Myrrhine, Daenerys conveys in Valyrian that their adversary offers nothing but the oppressive restraints and anguish. The dialect in Astapor closely resembles High Valyrian due to its proximity to ancient Valyria, making it easier for Daenerys to grasp. On the other hand, Myrrhine's dialect has evolved differently over time due to its distance from Valyria. In the books, Osnak Sopal engages in a fierce battle with Strong Belwas, a character who has not yet been introduced in the television series. After a series of successful charges, Belwas manages to injure Osnak's mount, forcing him to confront Belwas on foot. Surprisingly, Belwas allows Osnak to wound him before ultimately beheading him, and then proceeds to defecate beside his lifeless body. However, the TV adaptation alters this scene by depicting Dario urinating in the general direction of Myrrhine slave masters. Contrary to the books, Daenerys does not give the order to launch the chains and collars of liberated slaves over the walls of Myrrhine in barrels. In the novels, Dani is occasionally called Breaker of Chains. The taunts hurled at Daenerys and her army by the Myrrhinese champion are derived from the insults directed at King Arthur and his men by the French soldiers in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, 1975, but cleverly adapted into Valyrian as an inside joke. Missandei imparts her knowledge of the common tongue to Grey Worm, who discloses that his only memory since his castration is being born in the Summer Isles. In return, Missandei reveals that she remembers witnessing the burning of Narth when she was enslaved in Slaver's Bay. These two islands are located along the coastline of Sothyros, an infrequently visited continent positioned to the south of Westeros and Essos. Low Valyrian in the novels is depicted using glyphs instead of letters. Similar to the common tongue of Westeros in the books, Grey Worm is not taught how to read by Missandei or anyone else. There is no indication that Grey Worm learns the common tongue. Acting on Daenerys' command, Grey Worm and a group of Unsullied disguises themselves as slaves and infiltrate Myrrhine to persuade the enslaved population to revolt against their masters. They visit a slave pen where a debate is taking place among the slaves regarding whether or not to rise up against the great masters. The conversation among the Myrrhinese slaves does not take place in the books. While some older slaves argue against rebellion due to past failures, a young slave is already attempting to convince his fellow captives to fight back. Grey Worm arrives and empowers them, presenting them with weapons. The uprising is a resounding success, resulting in the city falling under Daenerys' control. In retaliation for the crucifixion of 163 slave children on the road to Myrrhine, Daenerys orders the crucifixion of 163 great masters. Ser Barristan advises her against this act, suggesting that mercy may be a more appropriate response to injustice. However, Daenerys, displaying her Targaryen heritage, firmly declares that she will mete out justice in response to injustice. From atop the Great Pyramid of Myrrhine, where the golden harpy of Gis has been replaced by the banner of House Targaryen, Dani hears the cries of the crucified great masters. With the conquest of all three cities on Slaver's Bay, Daenerys solidifies her control over the region. The original plan for the liberation of Myrrhine closely followed the events in the books, where the process was expected to be more prolonged. Jorah and Barristan, not Grey Worm, managed to infiltrate the city through the sewers and release the slaves. The freed slaves then created a distraction for the city's defenders, while Daenerys' forces entered through the gates, utilizing catapults and battering rams constructed from their ships. Showrunners Benioff and Weiss decided to deviate from the books by having Daenerys motivate the slaves to rebel independently, with assistance from Grey Worm, who had experienced slavery himself. The tactic of using Jorah and Barristan as a diversion was later employed for the liberation of Yunkai in Season 3. The Siege of Myrrhine lasts for a significantly longer period in the books. The ships that transported Daenerys and her followers from Qarth to Slaver's Bay are dismantled and repurposed as catapults and battering rams. After Daenerys' conquest, the bronze harpy atop the Great Pyramid of Meereen is completely removed in the books. During their sword training, Bronn urges Jaime to pay a visit to his brother Tyrion in the dungeon. He mentions that Tyrion chose Jaime as his champion in the Eyrie because he believed Jaime would come to his aid without hesitation. Jaime eventually goes to see Tyrion, revealing that Cersei had asked him to kill Tyrion. Despite this, Tyrion assures Jaime that he did not murder Joffrey. Tyrion points out that even if there was undeniable proof and a confession from the real culprit, Cersei would still seek his blood. He explains that the trial is particularly daunting as one of the judges has always harbored a desire to see him dead. Jaime informs Tyrion that Cersei is offering a knighthood to anyone who captures Sansa Stark. Tyrion maintains that Sansa is innocent of the crime despite having a strong motive. Jaime never receives any insistence from Bronn to pay a visit to Tyrion in his cell in the books, as he dedicates his time to honing his sword fighting skills with Adam Marbrand. Jaime comments on the conditions of Tyrion's cell, noting that it is not as terrible as it could be since it has 4 walls and a pot to piss in. This statement is actually in reference to Jaime's own experience as a prisoner of Robb. He takes the initiative to visit Tyrion entirely of his own volition, but only after the trial, where Tyrion intentionally fabricates a lie about murdering Joffrey without ever seeking Jaime's assistance in escaping. Bronn never states his belief in Tyrion's innocence. Also, Jaime and Bronn do not engage in any conversations throughout the books. Sansa confronts Peter Baelish with the accusation of being involved in Joffrey Baratheon's murder. Initially, Baelish denies the accusation, pointing out his absence and suggesting Tyrion as a possible culprit. Sansa defends Tyrion, convinced of his innocence, and questions Baelish's choice of Ser Dontos as an accomplice. Impressed by Sansa's intuition, Baelish admits Tyrion's innocence and discloses Sansa's unwitting role in Joffrey's death. The necklace from Ser Dontos was the murder weapon, with a poisonous stone slipped into Joffrey's wine. Sansa is shocked, considering the favors the Lannisters have bestowed upon Baelish, such as Harrenhal. Baelish acknowledges the benefits of his ties with the Lannisters, but emphasizes the importance of keeping enemies guessing, ensuring his absence from the wedding avoids suspicion. Despite Baelish's explanations, Sansa remains skeptical, doubting his involvement in poisoning a king for chaos. Baelish acknowledges Joffrey's instability and reveals that his demise was desired by his new friends, emphasizing the value of gifts in fostering new alliances. Lady Olenna informs Margaery of her imminent departure to Highgarden. She discusses the upcoming marriage between Margaery and King Tommen, expressing concerns that Cersei may manipulate Tommen against Margaery if she doesn't act quickly. Meanwhile, Cersei is preoccupied with falsely accusing her brother of her son's murder. Despite Margaery's doubts about Tyrion's innocence, Olenna assures her that he is innocent and admits she would never allow Margaery to marry him. Shocked, Margaery is left speechless as her grandmother concludes the conversation. In the books, Olenna never confesses to anyone about poisoning Joffrey. In The Lion and the Rose, there is a scene where Olenna appears to be tampering with Sansa's necklace while expressing her shock at the death of Sansa's brother during a wedding. In the series, Tommen's pet cat, Sir Pounce, only makes a single appearance. In the books, Margaery gifts Tommen 3 black kittens, but their conversation is not depicted. The purpose of the cat's presence was to highlight Tommen's gentle nature compared to Joffrey. However, according to writer Brian Cogman, the cat proved to be quite a challenge to work with. Cogman described it as a sumo wrestler cat that was afraid of candles and refused to jump on the bed. Natalie Dormer, who plays Margaery, became frustrated with the cat. This led to the cat never appearing again. In a playful interview with Entertainment Weekly, David Benioff jokingly stated that Cersei despised the name Sir Pounce so much that she orchestrated a diabolical execution for him. The details of Sir Pounce's gruesome demise were deemed too disturbing to be shown on air. Later, during the arrival of the wedding cake, Joffrey hands his cup to Margaery, who places it on their table next to Olenna's. It can be assumed that Olenna discreetly placed the stone into the cup, while Joffrey was distracting the audience by cutting the cake, or humiliating Tyrion once again. The conversation between Olenna and Margaery in the gardens is not featured in the books. Later that night, Marjorie sneaks into Tommen's chambers, charming him with compliments and promises of future visits. She subtly plants the idea of their future together, leaving Tommen falling asleep with a smile on his face. However, in the show, Littlefinger discloses this information to Sansa after she realizes that one of the gems from her hairnet necklace on the show is absent. The books do not clarify whether Marjorie becomes aware of the plot. During her initial meeting with Sansa, Olenna does mention her previous betrothal to an unspecified Targaryen. Luthor Tyrell was engaged to Shaira Targaryen, not Viola Redwyn, who is not mentioned in the books. Olenna did not have to seduce him because Shaira eloped with her brother Jaehaerys. Later in the books, it is revealed that the engagement with Daeron Targaryen, son of former King Aegon the Unlikely and younger brother of King Jaehaerys II, was terminated by mutual agreement as Daeron was concealing his homosexuality. Subsequently, Olenna wed Luthor Tyrell. Between the 3rd and 4th seasons, Black Friday 2013 was launched, mocking the numerous scenes in Game of Thrones where characters engage in political discussions while walking through palace gardens. In reaction, showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss intentionally reduced the number of such scenes and included a humorous moment where Olenna declares, "If I have to endure another leisurely walk through these gardens, I'll jump off the cliffs." Jon Snow and Grenn are instructing a group of recruits, which includes Locke and Ollie, on how to defend against wildlings. Alliser Thorne reprimands Jon, reminding him of his role as a steward, not a ranger, in an attempt to provoke him into making a mistake that would justify his execution. Jon exits the training area and converses with Locke, who pretends to be from the Stormlands and expresses genuine intentions to protect the realm. Janos Slynt points out to Thorne that Jon is well-liked while Thorne is not, and that Maester Aemon's suggestion of an election for a new Lord Commander would likely result in Jon being chosen over Thorne. Slynt persuades Thorne to allow Jon to handle the mutineers, hoping that they will eliminate Jon as a problem. Meanwhile, Samwell Tarly is worried about Gilly's safety in Molestown with wildlings on the loose. Jon empathizes with Sam, acknowledging the difficulty of the situation. In the novels, Jon does not seek Alliser Thorne's approval before heading to Craster's Keep to confront the mutineers. He reveals to Sam that ever since learning from him that his younger brother, Bran Stark, is alive and beyond the wall, he has been eager to go find him. Sam explains his unsuccessful attempt to bring Bran back, as Bran was determined to venture beyond the wall. Jon is never informed by Sam that Bran is beyond the wall. In the novel, Sam was compelled by Brandon Stark to make a solemn vow on 3 separate occasions, ensuring that their encounter remained a secret even from Jon. Sam, true to his word, faithfully kept his promise. It is worth noting that in the book, Bran's party never venture beyond Craster's Keep, and thus they are never taken captive. Just as Jon and Sam speculate that Bran may have sought refuge at Craster's Keep, Locke interrupts them. Locke brings Jon to Thorne, who approves his mission to Craster's Keep, but insists that Jon must recruit volunteers rather than forcing men to accompany him. Jon delivers a passionate speech, emphasizing the importance of dealing with the mutineers for the safety of Castle Black and the need for justice for Lord Commander Mormont. To the surprise of Thorne and Slynt, Grenn, Edison Tollett, and a group of other men volunteer to join Jon on his mission, with Locke even expressing willingness to take his vows before heading north of the Wall. Jon's punitive expedition is likely influenced by the aftermath of the wildling attack in the books. Thorne accuses Jon of desertion and the murder of Corran Halfhand, prompting him to send Jon back north with instructions to locate and eliminate Mance Rayder. In both scenarios, Thorne hopes that Jon will perish during this mission. Furthermore, Ghost, Jon's direwolf, does not remain at the keep either. Instead, he accompanies Jon on his journey to the wildlings. However, before Jon ascends the wall, he commands Ghost to return to Castle Black. Uncertain of whether Ghost comprehends these instructions, Jon arrives back at the castle only to find that Ghost has not yet returned. In the novel, Vargo Hoat, who Locke is based on, suffers the loss of his ear after an encounter with Brienne, which leads to his descent into madness as the wound festers. Unlike the show, Hoat remains at Harrenhal and never ventures north. Eventually, he faces torture and meets his demise at the hands of the Mountain. Chambers of the Kingsguard, Jaime assigns Brienne the task of locating Sansa. He implores her to locate and protect the girl from those who intend to deliver her to Cersei. Jaime equips her with a horse, provisions, and a newly crafted set of armor. Additionally, Jaime presents her with the sword bestowed upon him by his father, explaining that its Valyrian steel was forged from Ned Stark's sword and therefore should be utilized to safeguard Ned Stark's daughters. He also insists that she bring Podrick Payne along as a squire, both as a token of appreciation for the boy's loyalty to Tyrion and to shield him from those who might try to manipulate him against his former master. Prior to her departure, Brienne dubs the sword Oathkeeper and pledges to locate Sansa in honor of Jaime and Lady Catelyn. The title of the episode, Oathkeeper, alludes to the sword Jaime bestows upon Brienne. In the book, it is Jaime, not Brienne, who suggests the name Oathkeeper for the new sword. Brienne also never reads the White Book. Jaime explains to Brienne the purpose of the Book of the Brothers. He mentions that there are still numerous pages awaiting his own tales. This particular revelation sets the stage for a poignant moment in the series finale, The Iron Throne, 2019, where Brienne takes it upon herself to chronicle the remarkable endeavors of Jaime's last years, thus completing the remaining pages. Brienne displays hesitance in accepting Oathkeeper, prompting Jaime to adopt a rude tone and refer to her as a stubborn, stupid wench, while commanding her to depart before he alters his decision. In the book, Podrick does not accompany Brienne to search for Sansa. Instead of dispatching Podrick with her, Podrick trails behind Brienne. It is only much later that she discovers Podrick's desire to locate Sansa, as she can provide evidence of Tyrion's innocence. Upon learning this, Brienne consents to Podrick accompanying her on the journey. At Craster's Keep, the rebellious deserters remain firmly entrenched, indulging in the provisions stored there and committing acts of violence against Craster's wives. Carl Tanner, in a drunken state, boasts about his skills as a hired assassin in King's Landing while sipping wine from Jorah Mormont's skull. He then commands Rast to satisfy the creature. Simultaneously, one of Craster's wives enters the scene carrying Craster's final son, insisting that the infant must be offered as a sacrifice to the gods. Following Carl's orders, Rast abandons the infant on an exposed patch of land and proceeds to confront Ghost, the caged direwolf that the mutineers have captured. Rast cruelly taunts Ghost by withholding food and water from him. Suddenly, a snowstorm arises, causing the temperature to plummet and freezing the water that Rast was using to torment Ghost. Realizing the imminent arrival of the White Walkers, Rast hastily flees. The book only hints at the excessive debauchery of the mutineers at Craster's Keep within the Night's Watch. The commentary reveals that the original script intended to begin the episode with a long establishing shot, resembling a nightmarish blend of debauchery and professional adult movie actresses were even hired, but during filming it was unanimously agreed that the scene was excessively dark and gratuitous, even by the show's standards, and focused on relatively unfamiliar characters. Consequently, significant portions of the scene were edited out, including a shot of a Night's Watch member vomiting over the food prepared by Craster's wives, which was relocated to the end of the episode instead. The prop skull used by Carl as a cup, which belonged to Jorah Mormont, was custom made for the show. Gordon Fitzgerald, the prop master, took photos of James Cosmo's lower jaw and teeth to accurately incorporate his features into the design of the skull. Shortly after his return to the Watch from beyond the wall, the wildlings launch an assault on Castle Black, keeping Jon occupied with its defense while Thorne is away seeking reinforcements. Nearby, Bran Stark and his companions hear the child's cries. Bran walks into Summer to investigate, but Summer falls into a trap just outside Craster's Keep. Mira Reed, sensing danger, urges them to move on, but Bran insists on trying to free Ghost and Summer. Before they can do so, they are captured by the mutineers. Some of the deserters take pleasure in tormenting Hodor, while the rest are brought before Carl. Carl demands to know their identities and threatens to kill Mira and Yojen when they remain silent. Yojen suddenly suffers a seizure and collapses, prompting Mira to plead for her release so she can assist him. Carl agrees to let her go when Bran discloses his true identity. Bran's group never encounters Craster's Keep in the books, and therefore they are not captured. neither Ghost nor Summer are captured or imprisoned by the mutineers of the Night's Watch. In the farthest northern region of the world, a solitary White Walker travels on its undead steed towards a broken mountain, carrying Craster's final offspring in its embrace. Upon reaching the mountain, the White Walker ascends a grand circle of icicle pillars, dismounts, and positions the child on an ice altar at the center. Across from it, a row of dark-clothed White Walkers observe the ritual. Shortly after, one of them steps forward and gently lifts the crying infant, who quickly falls silent. The White Walker then presses its index finger's nail into the baby's cheek. The sound of ice cracking fills the air as the child's eyes transform into a chilling, depthless blue. The Night King, leader of the White Walkers and a key antagonist in the series, made his first appearance. Initially referred to as the Night's King in HBO's viewer guide, this character was a legendary figure in the books. The original Night's King was a former commander of the Night's Watch who was seduced and corrupted by a female White Walker and is believed to have died long ago. The viewer guide was later updated to change the name to Night King without the possessive. It remains unclear whether the show creators or author George R.R. Martin intended for the two characters to be the same entity. The transformation of Craster's baby son by the White Walker leader is not depicted in the novels. The novels provide little insight into the culture of the White Walkers, others, as they have limited interaction with the point of view characters. Nevertheless, Craster's wives have a suspicion that their sacrificed infant sons are transformed into others, and they refer to them as Craster's sons. The ultimate scene signifies the initial introduction in any form of media of the lands of Always Winter, the utmost northern region of Westeros, which is believed to be the abode of the White Walkers. This fact likely designates it as the furthest point ever explored in the entire show. Considering the considerable distance of these lands, situated beyond the haunted forest and spanning numerous hundreds of miles from the Wall, it is plausible that this scene takes place several days after the events of the rest of the episode, assuming that the White Walker's horse can maintain a swift pace over long distances. The scene where Craster's last son is taken to the land of Always Winter and transformed into a White Walker is absent from all published books. The episode begins with Tommen being officially declared the King of the Seven Kingdoms. Tommen's coronation is not depicted in the novels. The title of the episode, First of His Name, makes a nod to the naming convention for Westerosi kings. The recently crowned King Tommen is now officially recognized as King Tommen of the House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, and Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, essentially signifying King Tommen the First. During the ceremony, Cersei attempts to make a peaceful gesture towards Margaery. However, Margaery remains cautious and suspicious of Cersei's intentions. In the books, it is the Tyrells who propose the idea of Tommen marrying Margaery, even if it cannot be consummated. Cersei is irritated by the offer because it comes so soon after Joffrey's death, but she reluctantly agrees because the Lannisters need the support of the Tyrells. Additionally, Cersei never speaks negatively about Joffrey to Margaery or anyone else. Instead, she idolizes him even more after his death. In fact, he was her favorite child. In Season 3's Second Sons, Margaery enrages Cersei by proposing to address her as either sister or mother. Cersei, in response, issues a menacing threat to Margaery, warning that she would have her life taken away while she slept if she dared to refer to her as sister once more. In her new headquarters at the summit of the Great Pyramid of Meereen, Daenerys receives news of Joffrey's death and Tommen's coronation. She is displeased to discover that Daario Naharis has seized Meereen's navy without her explicit command, but contemplates the idea of sailing to Westeros and seizing King's Landing with her 8,000 unsullied and 2,000 second sons. In the book, the Second Sons fail to seize a single ship. All the ships present in the harbours of Meereen either escape or are obliterated by Daenerys' forces. The 3 ships under Daenerys' possession are dismantled as per her orders to construct siege machines. Barristan Selmy is hopeful about their prospects, believing that ancient Westerosi families will rally to their cause once Daenerys crosses the Narrow Sea, bolstering their forces. Jorah Mormont is less optimistic. While 10,000 soldiers may be sufficient to capture King's Landing from its weary defenders, the rest of the continent remains a concern. Her advisors then bring more troubling news. the wise masters have regained power and re-enslaved all liberated men in Yunkai. And although Astapor is still free, the council Daenerys established has been overthrown by a butcher named Cleon. Daenerys dismisses everyone except Jorah and reflects that her plans are falling apart. He reminds her that she is the final Targaryen and the mother of dragons, but Dany insists she must be more than that. She mourns that if she cannot maintain order in 3 cities, she stands no chance of ruling 7 kingdoms. Consequently, she decides to stay in Meereen and fulfill her duties as a queen. However, in the books, her choice to stay in Meereen temporarily is primarily a pragmatic decision due to the perilous nature of the overland route to Westeros. Lord Peter Baelish and Sansa Stark safely reach the Bloody Gate, with Peter advising Sansa to cover her hair to conceal her identity. To conceal her identity, Peter has Sansa dye her hair brown. He introduces her as his niece, Elaine. In the books, Littlefinger brings Sansa to the Vale of Arryn and disguises her as his bastard daughter, Elaine, with her hair dyed brown. However, the show doesn't go into much detail about this book plotline. The distance between the Eyrie and the Bloody Gate is also significantly greater in the books. Upon reaching the Eyrie, Sansa tries to maintain her alias, but her aunt, Lisa Arryn, recognizes her immediately. Lisa expresses regret over Sansa's mistreatment in King's Landing, disregarding Sansa's defense of Tyrion. Robin Arryn is excited to see Peter and to show Sansa the Moon Door. Lysa, granting Robin some freedom, instructs him to keep Sansa's true identity a secret and to escort her to her chambers. In the series, there are plans for Sansa to marry her cousin Robin, whereas in the books, Littlefinger intends for her to marry Harold Harding, who is the closest living relative of Robin. It's worth noting that in the novels, Robin is referred to as Robert and remains unaware of Sansa's true identity. In the book, Lisa remains unaware of Sansa's true identity until the following day, expressing displeasure at her presence. Robin never addresses Peter as uncle and does not receive any gifts from him, nor does Robin bring up the Red Wedding ever. Once alone, Lisa insists on marrying Petyr at once, claiming they already had a wedding night in the past. In a private moment, Lisa discloses that she had been pregnant with Littlefinger's child in the past, but was forced to have an abortion by her father. She confesses to poisoning her previous husband and framing the Lannisters, using these actions as proof of her love for Peter. In Season 2's What Is Dead May Never Die, Tyrion accused Pycelle of murdering Aeryn. Pycelle argued that he knew Jon Arryn had discovered the truth about Cersei's children and intended to inform Robert. However, he denied any involvement in Arryn's death, stating that someone else had beaten him to it and he simply allowed it to happen. It turns out that both Hugh and Pycelle were actually innocent. This also clarifies why Lysa refused to have the Vale army support the Starks against the Lannisters in Season 1, despite claiming that the latter had killed her husband. Strengthening the Starks would have weakened the Lannisters and shortened the war that Littlefinger was hoping to instigate. Littlefinger emerges as the true mastermind, manipulating Lysa and falsely accusing the Lannisters to ensue chaos. However, Littlefinger's schemes ultimately led to the unintended death of his beloved Catelyn. Littlefinger, feeling uneasy about her speaking so openly about these revelations, attempts to silence Lisa by kissing her. It is much later in the book when Lisa confesses to killing Jon Arryn and sending the false letter to Catelyn. This revelation occurs while she is dragging Sansa towards the Moon Door with Marillion present. Despite Peter's attempts to dissuade her, Lysa reveals witnesses and a Septon waiting outside. She vows to scream so loudly that night that her voice will be heard across the narrow sea. Later, Sansa struggles to sleep as Lysa fulfills her promise. In the book, during the wedding ceremony, Sansa finds herself assisting in undressing Littlefinger for the bedding ritual, as Lysa has only 3 ladies in attendance. Despite being paraded into Lysa's chamber in the nude, Littlefinger continues to smile at Sansa. Lisa and Peter get married at his ancestral home on the Fingers, not at the Eyrie. Later that evening, a drunken singer named Marillion attempts to assault Sansa, only to be thwarted by Littlefinger's knight Luther. In Season 1's The Wolf and the Lion, Ned hinted that Hugh might have used Lannister money to purchase his armor, which he obtained for poisoning Arryn, and that he was subsequently silenced by the Mountain during the jousting event. In a separate conversation, Tywin discloses a troubling matter to Cersei regarding the Iron Bank of Braavos. He informs her that they owe an enormous amount of money to the bank, and to make matters worse, the gold mines in the Westerlands have been depleted for the past 3 years. Despite acknowledging that the Lannisters can only rely on themselves, Tywin emphasizes the importance of having the support and resources of the Tyrells. Cersei suggests negotiating with a representative from the bank, but Tywin dismisses the idea, explaining that the bank is an unyielding institution that cannot be deceived, manipulated, or avoided. The conversation between Tywin and Cersei does not occur in the books. Cersei and Tywin do not discuss the Lannisters' mines running dry. The Lannisters remain wealthy, with the crown owing them most of its debts instead of the Iron Bank. The gold mines of the Westerlands continue to thrive in the books. They have not depleted. In the show, the storyline was altered to emphasize their need to form an alliance with the Tyrells for their military and financial assistance. Cersei points out that Westeros has not seen a competent king in half a century. Aegon V Targaryen is often regarded as the most recent good ruler. He passed away 43 years prior to this event, paving the way for the Mad King's disastrous reign, resulting in Robert's rebellion and the downfall of the Targaryen dynasty. Robert assumed the throne, yet he indulged in revelry and debauchery, delegating political matters to his advisors. Joffrey's reign was marred by 3 years of brutality and internal conflict. Arya accompanies the Hound on their journey. She reviews her nightly death prayer. Arya's list of targets includes Joffrey, Cersei, Walder Frey, Meryn Trant, Tywin, Melisandre, Beric Dondarrion, Thoros of Myr, Elyn Payne, the Mountain, and the Hound. The Hound mostly agrees with the concept of a death list, but he is slightly surprised to find his own name included. It would be more convenient if she simply documented everything. Polliver has already been eliminated from the list, and Arya is still unaware of Joffrey's demise. In the books, she does not have Walder on her list because she is not familiar with the specific phrase responsible for her family's deaths. Beric and Thoros do not betray Gendry to Melisandre, and Arya never encounters the latter, so they are not included in her list either. Later, Lysa and Sansa share a meal together, where Lysa kindly offers Sansa some lemon cakes. Sansa, feeling relieved and safe, allows herself to indulge in the treats. However, her comfort is short-lived as Lysa starts recounting stories of Catelyn's past overeating, making Sansa feel a bit self-conscious. Lysa reassures Sansa that it was just a story and encourages her to keep eating. She even reveals that Peter had gone to great length to bring 3 crates of lemons from the Crownlands just for Sansa's cakes. Sophie Turner had to consume multiple lemon cakes during the filming of the emotional scene between Sansa and Lysa. Kate Dickie mentioned that Turner was sick after filming. Suddenly, Lysa's demeanor drastically changes from that of a caring aunt to that of a jealous and unstable newlywed. She demands to know why Peter cares so much about Sansa and questions if he has been intimate with her, just like he has been with his prostitutes. Lysa also goes on a rant about Catelyn's love for Sansa's uncle Brandon and how he almost killed Petyr. This horrifies Sansa, causing her to burst into tears. She insists that she is still a virgin and reveals that Peter sees her as a naive girl who knows nothing and always tells the truth. In a sudden shift, Lysa immediately calms down and comforts Sansa, assuring her that she believes her. She states that since neither Tyrion nor Peter have slept with Sansa, she can proceed with marrying Robin. Sansa is unsure of how to process this information. In the book, Lys is portrayed as being more wary of Sansa's connection with Littlefinger, and their initial interaction does not involve a pleasant conversation over lemon cakes. There is no indication in the books that Catelyn had a fondness for sweets or that she needed to go on a diet. Lysa perceives Sansa as a danger to her son, given that she is being pursued by the Lannisters. Kate Dickie, Lysa Arryn, promptly read Game of Thrones books upon being cast in Season 1, thus gaining full knowledge of her character's deceitful nature and manipulative tendencies right from the start. Meanwhile, on their journey to the Eyrie, Sandor Clegane and Arya Stark continue their verbal and physical sparring. Clegane particularly mocks Arya's water dancing skills and insults Syrio Forel for being defeated by someone like Meryn Trant, whom he considers to be nothing more than a thug. They argue back and forth. Arya showcases some impressive sword skills. On the other hand, the Hound argues that if Forel had a proper sword, he could have easily defeated someone like Trant. The fate of Forel remains uncertain, as he could have potentially picked up a sword from one of the other Kingsguard members who were disarmed. However, without armor, he most certainly died like the Hound demonstrates in this scene. This mirrors the strategy employed by Jorah Mormont in defeating Kotho in Season 1's Baelor. Despite Kotho's superior speed and agility, his sword proves futile against Jorah's armor. Cersei extends an invitation to Oberyn Martell to take a leisurely walk within the confines of the Red Keep. She expresses her sorrow over the fact that despite their influential positions, both of them were unable to prevent the unfortunate tragedies that befell their families. The Queen Regent inquires about her daughter, Myrcella, who is currently under the guardianship of Dorne, and proudly presents the sailing ship she had specially crafted for her. Oberyn reassures Cersei that her daughter is secure and pledges to personally deliver the thoughtful present. In the books, Cersei isn't interested in her daughter, so she doesn't request Oberyn to send Myrcella a gift. This episode explicitly states that Oberyn, as in the books, has 8 daughters, yet only 3 of them are actually shown in the show. He does mention his 5th daughter, Elia, but she does not appear on screen. While traveling, Podrick's presence becomes a challenge for Brienne. He encounters difficulties with his horse and accidentally causes a rabbit they were cooking to catch fire. Brienne attempts to release Podrick from the vow he made as her squire in order to part ways, but her efforts are unsuccessful. Their destination is Castle Black, where Brienne suspects Sansa may have sought refuge with her half-brother, Jon Snow. Brienne wants to know about Podrick's responsibilities as a squire to Tyrion. He explains that his duties mainly involved serving wine and performing other menial tasks. Brienne then questions whether Podrick had any combat experience. Podrick discloses how he eliminated Sir Mandon Moore of the Kingsguard by thrusting a spear through his head when he attempted to harm Tyrion during the Battle of the Blackwater. Subsequently, Brienne shows Podrick some respect and permits him to assist her in removing her armor. During his exploration of Craster's Keep, Locke searches for the Night's Watch group tasked with eliminating the traitors hiding within. In his investigation, Locke locates the cabin where Bran Stark, Jojen, Mira, and Hodor are held captive. Upon returning to Jon Snow and the rest of the group, Locke informs them that there are only 11 traitors present, most of whom are intoxicated and pose little threat. Additionally, Locke deceives them about the cabin where Bran and his companions are imprisoned, falsely claiming it only houses hounds and advising them to steer clear to avoid alerting the enemy. Jon, trusting Locke's information, decides that the attack will take place at nightfall. Locke, a character inspired by Vargo Hoat from the books, remains at Harrenhal and is eventually apprehended by Gregor Clegane, who carries out a slow and brutal execution as per Tywin Lannister's command. Hoat does not infiltrate the Night's Watch or die beyond the wall. That evening, Karl enters the prisoner's hut and tries to assault Mira, but Jojen interrupts Karl by revealing his possession of the site and claiming to have foreseen Karl's death before the night ends. In that moment, Ras bursts in to warn Karl that the keep is under attack. Jon's group swiftly breaches the defenses and begins eliminating their treacherous former comrades. In the chaos, Locke sneaks into the hut and tries to kidnap Bran, but Bran enters Hodor's mind and uses him to eliminate Locke. Bran notices Jon amidst the battle and desires to join him, but Jojen stops him, reminding Bran that they must continue their journey to find the three-eyed raven and that Jon would impede their progress in an attempt to protect Bran as his older brother. Reluctantly, Bran departs despite being so near to Jon. The Night's Watch quickly overpowers their adversaries and Jon confronts Karl in a one-on-one duel. Karl's utilization of underhanded tactics acquired from his criminal past gives him the advantage. Just as he is about to finish Jon, one of Craster's wives named Sissy stabs him from behind. When Karl turns to face her, Jon rises to his feet and thrusts Longclaw through the back of Karl's skull, ending his life. Following the battle, the aftermath reveals the deaths of 4 Night's Watch brothers, including Locke, while all but one of the traitors are found. The lone surviving mutineer, Rast, flees in fear through the forest until he stumbles upon the cage where Ghost was imprisoned. He notices that someone has opened the cage, but before he can comprehend this, the direwolf suddenly attacks and kills him. Ghost then reunites with Jon, who is filled with joy at seeing his loyal companion again. John speaks with Craster's wives, cautioning them about the imminent arrival of Mance Rayder's army and other dangers, and offers to lead them to safety south of the wall. However, the women decline the offer, choosing to embark on their own journey. Before returning to Castle Black, John orders the burning of Craster's Keep, along with the bodies of all those who perished there. Ghost reunites with John at a much later point in the books, following the conclusion of the Battle of Castle Black, without harming Rast. Rast, one of the castle's defenders, meets his demise at the hands of Athen during the initial phase of the battle. In the books, John is unable to take punitive action against the mutineers at Craster's Keep due to the wildlings launching an attack on Castle Black. Subsequently, he is assigned a different mission. At this point, he is not yet reunited with Ghost, as the direwolf is on his way back to Castle Black, having been ordered to return there by John before he climbed the wall. Cold Hands eliminates 5 mutineers off-screen, including Olo Lophand, who killed Yor Mormont. He then feeds these mutineers to Bran, Jojen, Mira, and Hodor, pretending it is pig meat. The fate of the remaining mutineers and Craster's wives is unknown, as they do not come into contact with the Night's Watch or Bran and his companions. Stannis and Davos pay a visit to the Iron Bank of Braavos, seeking financial support for Stannis' military campaign. The colossal statue that Stannis and Davos walk under at the start of the episode is inspired by the Colossus of Rhodes, an ancient Greek monument dedicated to the sun god Helios and one of the original 7 wonders of the ancient world. The original statue has been lost to time, with only vague descriptions remaining. Medieval interpretations of the Colossus show it straddling the harbour entrance, but modern engineering studies suggest this would have been structurally unsound. It is possible that the statue in Braavos could have been constructed using different materials and techniques. Initially, Tycho Nestoris, a bank representative, declines their plea. However, Davos persuades him by highlighting that backing Stannis is the most promising strategy to recover the gold owed by Tywin Lannister. Davos, when questioned about Tywin's age at the Iron Bank, states that he is 67 years old. It is worth noting that Charles Dance, the actor portraying Tywin, was indeed 67 years old. However, in the book, Tywin's age at this particular juncture was 58. Eventually, the bank approves the loan due to the Lannisters, particularly Cersei, refusing to repay their debt, and Davos utilizes it to re-enlist his former pirate ally, Salladhor Saan, to join forces with Stannis once more. In the books, Stannis does not seek financial assistance from the Iron Bank until the 6th novel, The Winds of Winter, long after the battle at Castle Black, after he successfully defeats the wildlings beyond the wall. Also, it happens when the situation with his army is far less critical compared to the television adaptation. After the Battle of Blackwater Bay, he is left with approximately 1,500 to 1,600 soldiers, with a majority of them hailing from House Fleuron. However, as time progresses, he successfully recruits around 2,000 to 3,000 warriors from the northern mountain clans, and a few hundred troops from minor houses such as the Mormonts. Instead of traveling to Braavos to negotiate with the bank's representatives, Tycho Nestoris comes to meet Stannis while he is in the midst of his campaign to take control of the north from the Boltons. Davos is not present during the meeting between Stannis and Tycho Nestoris in the north, as he was previously sent to White Harbour to secure the backing of Lord Wyman Manderley. Lastly, Tycho readily provides Stannis with the necessary funds without any inquiries or reservations. This is due to Cersei's refusal to repay their debts until her enemies are defeated, causing the Iron Bank to doubt her ability to maintain control over Westeros. Writer Brian Cogman clarified that these alterations were made in the show for several reasons. By having Stannis travel to Braavos, the creators were able to introduce yet another new aspect of this world. Additionally, it added a sense of humiliation and drama for Stannis to seek a loan outside of his comfort zone. Cogman also aimed to emphasize that the Iron Bank has not completely abandoned the Lannisters, but rather keeps their options open by financing their adversaries as well. This strategy increases their chances of recovering the owed money. During Davos's presentation to the Iron Bank representatives, he reveals his missing fingertips. In order to depict this accurately, CGI was utilized to digitally erase the upper knuckles of Liam Cunningham's hand. In the books, Davos never encounters Salladhor Saan in a Braavosi bathhouse as Salladhor abandoned Stannis just before Stannis got his loan from the Iron Bank, which would have allowed him to pay the pirate. Yara Greyjoy is preparing her troops for the imminent assault on the Dreadfort in order to rescue her brother, Theon. As she reads the letter sent by Ramsay Snow, which contains a menacing threat to flay any Ironborn who remain in the north, Yara's determination grows stronger. Meanwhile, Ramsay indulges in a encounter with Miranda, while Yara and her troops stealthily make their way to the castle. Silently eliminating the guards, they continue their search for Theon. Through interrogating one of the guards, Yara discovers Theon's whereabouts, which happen to be the dog kennels. Despite her earlier promise not to harm anyone, Yara is compelled to kill the guard. Finally, they reach the dog kennels and find Theon confined in a cage. Yara opens the cage, but Theon, consumed by his fear of Ramsay's sadistic tricks, refuses to accompany her. Suddenly, Ramsay and a group of Bolton soldiers enter the scene, triggering a fierce battle that results in casualties on both sides. Theon, now identifying himself as Reek, bites Yara and retreats back into his cage, displaying his broken spirit. Ramsay then unleashes the hounds, forcing Yara and her remaining forces to retreat to their ship. When questioned about Theon's fate, Yara solemnly declares that he is dead. In the books, there is no rescue mission by the Ironborn to save Theon from Ramsay, since Asha Greyjoy, Yara on the show, assumes Theon is deceased. The nearest event in the book is when Ramsay gives Theon the opportunity to go back home with the rest of the Ironborn after the liberation of Moat Cailin. Nevertheless, Theon recognizes this as another loyalty test by Ramsay and declines. His decision proves to be correct, as Ramsay ends up having the other Ironborn flayed regardless. Yara's involvement in this episode signifies the final appearance of the House Greyjoy plotline for over a season. At a certain point in the 5th novel, Asha contemplates the idea of rescuing Theon, not out of personal concern for him, but due to the political implications it would have in the Iron Islands. However, she never gets the opportunity to put her plan into action. Ramsay grants Reek the privilege of bathing as a token of appreciation for his unwavering loyalty. Although Reek harbors apprehensions about the bath being a deceitful ploy, Ramsay assures him otherwise. As Reek indulges in the cleansing ritual, Ramsay devises a scheme to attack Moat Cailin, relying on Reek to assume the identity of someone he no longer is, Theon Greyjoy. Theon's abuse at the hands of Ramsay is depicted more severely in the books. He appears to be 40 years older due to stress and starvation, with pale skin from lack of exposure to sunlight, and missing teeth from Ramsay's violence. Those familiar with Theon struggle to identify him. The books do not directly mention his castration. Brian Cogman had initially written a scene showing Theon in the bath to reveal the state of his genitals, but this concept was ultimately discarded. On a bright and sunny day just outside of Meereen, a goat herd and his young son peacefully tend to their goats on a serene hill. As the son playfully throws rocks to pass the time, a sudden and unexpected event unfolds. Drogon, now grown to the size of a majestic horse, emerges from the skies and unleashes his fiery breath upon the field, engulfing it in flames. In the midst of the chaos, he ruthlessly takes the life of a flock of goats, but not without snatching one away with him. Filled with despair and a sense of loss, the goat herd decides to embark on a journey to Meereen, seeking an audience with the Queen. Carrying the charred remains of his once thriving flock, he hopes to present them before Daenerys, fearing her wrath and believing it to be a form of punishment. Upon meeting the grief-stricken goat herd, Daenerys expresses her sincere apologies for the actions of her dragon, Drogon. She acknowledges the devastation caused and assures the goat herd that she will make amends for his loss. In a gesture of goodwill, she promises to compensate him threefold for the value of his flock, understanding the significance of his livelihood and the impact of this tragic event. After his departure, his Darzo Lorak presents a petition requesting permission to bury his father's remains in the Temple of the Graces. His father was one of the Meereenese great masters who were crucified on Daenerys' orders. In response, Daenerys reminds him that his father was among those who crucified the 163 children. However, Lorak reveals that his father had actually opposed the crucifixion of the slave children, but was overruled. Despite his father's stance, he was still killed as a result of Daenerys' judgment. This revelation somewhat appeases Daenerys, leading her to grant Lorak permission to bury his father. As Lorak departs, Daenerys inquires about the number of remaining supplicants. Missandei informs her that there are still over 200 more waiting. Hizdahr-zo, Lorak's father, is not mentioned in the books. According to writer Brian Cogman, the inspiration for Hizdahr pleading with the Queen to grant his father a dignified burial came from the Greek tragedy Antigone. In this episode, the eastern continent is commonly known as Essos. However, it is often referred to by most characters as the East or across the Narrow Sea, or they mention one of its distinct regions like Slaver's Bay or the Free Cities. Essos can be loosely compared to Eurasia. During a small council meeting, Tywin announces to the council members that Tyrion's trial will commence later that day. Lord Varys informs Tywin about the Hound's presence in the Riverlands, prompting Tywin to issue a bounty on his head. In the books, no bounty is placed on the Hound's head. Varys also updates the council on Daenerys' successful conquest of Meereen, leading Tywin to devise strategies to prevent her from launching an invasion. According to Tywin, it has been 300 years since dragons emerged victorious in a war. This statement refers to the initial Targaryen invasion of Westeros, which took place 3 centuries ago. Originating from Essos, the Targaryens were the sole house possessing dragons, enabling them to swiftly conquer most of the other houses and nearly the entire continent. Subsequently, dragons were not required to win any further wars, as their mere existence served as a deterrent against uprisings in the following decades. However, dragons were used during the Dance of the Dragons over a century later. In the books, there is no interaction between Oberyn and Varys. The novel details Oberyn's 5-year stay in Essos as a consequence of his involvement in a formal duel resulting in the death of a lord from House Ironwood. He was essentially exiled to Essos for a number of years to facilitate the reconciliation of relations between the Martells and the Yronwoods. In the dungeon, Jaime has Tyrion restrained and brought into the throne room to initiate his trial. Instead of speaking with Jaime, Tyrion engages in multiple conversations with his uncle Kevin prior to the trial. Before the trial, Tyrion contemplates a trial by combat, but Kevin assures him that Cersei will choose the Mountain as her champion. As the trial takes a turn for the worse, Kevin suggests that Tyrion should plead for mercy and join the Night's Watch. The trial of Tyrion lasts for 4 days in the book. King Tommen excuses himself from the proceedings and appoints his grandfather Tywin, Prince Oberyn Martell, and Lord Mace Tyrell as judges. Several witnesses are summoned to testify for the prosecution, including Sir Meryn Trant, Grand Maester Pycelle, Queen Regent Cersei, and Varys, all of whom provide evidence supporting the accusations against Tyrion. Pycelle lists 9 types of poison, including Tears of Lys. Cersei does not testify in the books. Instead, Osney and Osfryd Kettleblack testify about the threats Tyrion made towards her, promising to turn her happiness into ashes in her mouth. During recess, Jaime approaches Tywin and makes a plea on behalf of Tyrion. He offers to break his oath to the Kingsguard and return to Casterly Rock, becoming Tywin's heir if Tyrion is spared. Tywin agrees to this proposition and informs Jaime that Tyrion will be given the opportunity to join the Night's Watch after being found guilty of Joffrey's murder, as long as he pleads for mercy. Before recess concludes, Jaime has a conversation with Tyrion and encourages him to accept the offer. However, Tyrion remains skeptical, recalling how Eddard Stark was promised a similar deal but still lost his life. Despite Tyrion's doubts, Jaime implores him to trust their father and assures him that Tywin will honor his word. He advises Tyrion to remain silent and avoid any further outbursts. Tywin's swift agreement to spare Tyrion's life during their negotiation with his father leaves Jaime in a state of shock. This unexpected response prompts Jaime to question whether his offer to leave the Kingsguard was part of Tywin's plan all along. The showrunners have confirmed that Tywin did indeed intend for this outcome from the moment Tyrion was arrested. In the books, the conversation between Tywin and Jaime does not occur. Their final interaction is the argument where Tywin disowns Jaime, as depicted in Season 4, Episode 1's Two Swords. Upon returning to the trial, Tywin instructs the next witness to take the stand, Shae. Both Tyrion and Jaime are taken aback by her presence. Shae proceeds to testify that Tyrion and Sansa conspired to murder Joffrey, alleging that Sansa sought revenge for the deaths of her family members. she also reveals intimate details about Tyrion's personal life, causing him great embarrassment. In a fit of rage, Tyrion interrupts her testimony and declares his guilt, expressing regret for not letting Stannis Baratheon destroy King's Landing. Tywin assumes Tyrion is confessing to Joffrey's murder, but Tyrion corrects him, admitting to a different crime, being a dwarf. Despite Tywin's dismissal, Tyrion insists that his stature has always been his trial. When prompted to defend himself, Tyrion chooses to remain silent, except for one statement. He confesses his desire to kill Joffrey, emphasizing his disdain for Cersei and her son. As he is escorted away, Tyrion vehemently rejects the unjust accusations and demands a trial by combat, refusing to accept a death sentence for a crime he did not commit. In the television series, Shae provides a fabricated testimony against Tyrion as an act of vengeance for his abandonment and derogatory remarks towards her. In the books, the testimony remains unchanged. She accuses Tyrion of making her his and mistreating her, but it becomes evident that Shae does not genuinely love Tyrion. Additionally, it is revealed through a flashback in the fourth novel, A Feast for Crows, that Cersei bribed Shae to give false testimony. A number of viewers expressed their confusion regarding Shae's presence in King's Landing, despite Bronn witnessing her boarding a ship in the Lion and the Rose. In response, writer Brian Cogman clarified that following Joffrey's demise, Tywin commanded the halt of all ships in the port, leading to her retrieval. Oberyn offers to stand as Tyrion's champion in his trial, before Shae gives her testimony. Varys takes an entire day to deliver his testimony along with Shae. Tyrion appears to be the least affected by Varys' testimony. While it is true that Tyrion advised Joffrey to choose his words more carefully, Varys conveniently neglects to mention that this advice was prompted by Joffrey's horrifying threat to serve Sansa Robb's severed head. Tyrion's lack of surprise can be attributed to the fact that, as revealed in behind-the-scenes documentaries, Varys had already made it clear that he would never jeopardize his own life to save Tyrion from Tywin or Cersei. Numerous other witnesses, such as Balon Swan and Taena Merryweather, also take the stand. Boros Blount, who violently slapped Sansa and was threatened by Tyrion, not Meryn Trant, is the one who presents his case against Tyrion. Bronn is not investigated for any involvement in Joffrey's murder in the books. Peter Dinklage submitted this episode for consideration in the supporting actor in a drama series category at the 2014 Emmy Awards, marking his fourth nomination for the show, which he won. This episode marks a departure from the usual presence of a Stark family member or one of their closest allies. It was not intentional, as typically scenes filmed for one episode are repurposed for others, often including a brief appearance by a Stark child. However, due to the heavy focus on the Lannister storyline in this particular episode, there was no room to incorporate the Stark family or their allies. The title of the episode, The Laws of Gods and Men, alludes to Tyrion's trial and the legal framework of Westeros. While awaiting the trial by combat, Tyrion finds solace in the new predicaments he has caused for his father. In his cell, Tyrion and Jaime are discussing Tyrion's fate and the irony of Lord Tywin striking down both his heirs if Jaime were to die as Tyrion's champion. Jaime refuses to be Tyrion's champion, citing his inability to fight effectively with his left hand. Tyrion then asks Jaime to bring Bronn to him, hoping that the sellsword will stand for him just like he did at the Eyrie. Tyrion acknowledges to himself that Cersei thwarts his actions before he even takes them. Meanwhile, Gregor Clegane, also known as the Mountain, is ruthlessly executing prisoners with a greatsword. Conan Stevens and Ian White, who portrayed the Mountain in seasons 1 and 2 respectively, have been replaced by Hafthor Julius Bjornsson for the rest of the series. This makes Bjornsson the only character to have been recast twice. It is possible that White was unavailable for the role due to his commitment to playing one of the giants in Season 4. Cersei approaches him and expresses her gratitude for his prompt return to King's Landing as her champion for the trial by combat. Gregor asks about his opponent, to which Cersei questions if it truly matters, and he simply shakes his head. The exchange between Cersei and Gregor Clegane does not take place within the pages of the books. Traveling in the Riverlands, Arya and Sandor debate entering a burned-out village. They do, and find a man dying of a stab wound to the stomach and the subsequent agony of a long drawn-out infection. He doesn't even know who the brigands fought for. The three of them have a philosophical conversation on death until Sandor puts the man out of his misery. He points out where the heart is to Arya before wiping the farmer's blood off his dirk. The conversation is a purposeful nod to Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, a playwright whom the showrunners admire. Barry McGovern, the actor portraying the dying farmer, has participated in numerous stage adaptations of the play, as well as in the 2001 film version of Waiting for Godot. Suddenly, Biter ambushes Sandor and leaps onto his back, sinking his teeth into his neck. Sandor rips and twists Biter off of him, after breaking Biter's neck, killing him instantly. Rourke appears on the scene and engages in a brief conversation where he informs Clegane of the Purple Wedding as well as the sizable reward for his death. Arya then recognizes him as one of the men in the cage bound for the wall. "Is he on your little list?" asks Sandor. "He can't be. I don't know his name." When Sandor asks for his name, the man replies with Rourke. Arya thanks him and then quick draws with all the grace of a water dancer and puts needle through his heart, slaying the murderer who once threatened. The Hound compliments her with some approval. Brienne, not Arya, is the one who kills Rourke in the books. Gendry is also the one who kills Biter, not the Hound. In the book, the Hound sustains severe injuries inflicted by Polliver and the Tickler during the altercation at a tavern in the Riverlands, rather than by Biter. Arya and the Hound discovered the dying man who had been wounded by an unidentified Bolton soldier, rather than by Rourke and Biter. Polliver, not Rourke, informs Arya and the Hound about Joffrey's death. Arya suggests using fire to cauterize the wound, but declines due to his fear of flames. Sandor confirms the truth behind his facial scars, caused by Gregor's brutal actions and how his father concealed the reality, leaving him feeling isolated. The Hound's burnt face is mentioned for the second time in this episode after it was first brought up in Season 1's Cripples, Bastards and Broken Things. Interestingly, this is the first time that the Hound himself narrates the story, which was originally intended to be done by him in the aforementioned episode. However, due to unfavorable weather conditions, the scene had to be delayed and Littlefinger ended up recounting it instead. It is worth noting that in the books, Arya remains unaware of how the Hound's disfigurement occurred and never asks about it. In the episode, Arya offers to clean and stitch his wounds, and Sandor reluctantly agrees. The Hound and the Mountain are shown in this episode without their armor for the very first time. Jon and his fellow brothers arrive back at Castle Black after their time at Craster's Keep. As soon as Alliser Thorne catches sight of Jon's direwolf, Ghost, he immediately orders the creature to be removed from the premises. Jon then proceeds to propose a plan to the Night's Watch, suggesting that they block off Castle Black's entry tunnel with ice and rocks in order to protect against the impending wildling invasion. However, his request is denied, with the reminder that his role within the Watch is that of a steward. Reluctantly, the First Builder agrees with Thorne's assessment that the tunnel can be defended. Consequently, Jon and Sam are assigned the duty of serving as sentries atop the wall until Mance arrives. In the year 2011, Brian Fortune made his debut in the television series You Win or You Die as a member of the Night's Watch who was present during Jon and Sam's vows. Initially, the writers intended for him to portray Bowen Marsh, the first steward, and this was how the character was identified on the Game of Thrones wiki until Season 4. However, Fortune's character was actually First Builder Othel Yarwick, retroactively altering his role in the show. Bronn arrives at Tyrion's side dressed as a lord, having been promised to Lolly Stokeworth by Cersei. He declines to face the Mountain, citing both the absence of a suitable reward and his belief that Clegane poses too great a threat. Despite feeling heartbroken over Bronn's choice, Tyrion comprehends his decision and bids him farewell. In the book, Bronn declines the offer to be his champion, detailing a hypothetical scenario of the fight. Interestingly, his description perfectly foreshadows the trial by combat in the subsequent episode. Before the series, Flynn, who plays Bronn, and Lena Headey, who plays Cersei, were involved in a real-life relationship that allegedly ended on such negative terms that they had a clause in their contracts, ensuring they would always be kept separate, both on and off screen. Despite Flynn's denial of this in interviews, their characters have never appeared together on the show, except for a brief moment in Season 3's Valar Dohaeris. even though Bronn and Cersei have interactions in the books. Daenerys is taken aback by Daario's sudden appearance in her private chambers. She pretends to be upset by the intrusion, but eventually agrees to listen to his grievances. Daario expresses his frustration, stating that he excels only in killing men and seducing women, yet lacks the opportunity to showcase these skills. Dany points out that the Second Sons are currently serving as Meereen's peacekeepers, and that there are plenty of women in the city who would be interested in him. However, Daario belittles the Second Son's current role and reveals that the woman he desires is not reciprocating his feelings. He pleads with Daenerys to allow him and the Second Sons to engage in real warfare. Instead, Dany focuses on Daario's other talent and commands him to undress. Queen Selyse converses with Melisandre while she is enjoying a bath. Melisandre jokes that the Lord of Light mentioned it would be her last good bath, but Selyse doesn't catch on. To solidify Selyse's loyalty as Melisandre's top follower, the Red Priestess discusses using potions and illusions in the service of the Lord of Light, emphasizing that some theatrics and deceit to reveal the truth will be pardoned in the future. When Selyse inquires if Melisandre used potions during her encounter with Stannis, she denies it. Selyse then expresses her wish to leave their daughter Shireen behind when they journey to the north, but Melisandre disregards Shireen's heresy as usual and assures Selyse that Shireen will play a crucial role in their destination. The exchange between Melisandre and Selyse is absent from the books, at least not depicted directly, as they are not point-of-view characters. In the books, Melisandre discloses to Mance Rayder and Jon about her employment of illusionary enchantments, which manipulate individuals into perceiving what aligns with their expectations. In the books, Stannis does not provide an explanation for taking Shireen with him. It seems that he simply believes she would be safer away from Dragonstone, considering he left only a small force to defend it. Additionally, the looming threat of the Lannisters utilizing the Tyrell's fleets to blockade Dragonstone adds to the urgency of their departure. Melisandre requires Shireen due to the power that lies within a king's blood. In this particular episode, Melisandre is depicted indulging in a bath while not wearing her necklace. Observant viewers have subsequently pointed out that in later seasons, whenever she removes her necklace, she instantaneously undergoes a transformation into an elderly woman. Actress Carice Van Houten later acknowledged this inconsistency during an interview with Ella, suggesting that it was merely an oversight. Daario unexpectedly encounters Ser Jorah the morning after the passionate night Daario spent with Daenerys. Daario mentions that it's an opportune moment to approach the Queen, as she is in high spirits, hinting at his recent intimacy with Daenerys. Jorah is unimpressed, but Daenerys disregards any concerns about her personal life. She informs Jorah that she dispatched Daario to lead the Second Sons to Yunkai in order to regain control of the city and eliminate the resurfaced masters. Jorah draws a parallel to Eddard Stark's merciful approach towards slavery and convinces Daenerys to bring the masters to justice without resorting to execution. After contemplating for a moment, Daenerys instructs Jorah to appoint Hizdahr zo Loraq as her ambassador, who will offer the masters a choice. They can either embrace the new world she envisions and live freely, or cling to their old ways and face death. The Second Sons will be stationed in Yunkai to enforce whichever decision the masters make. Additionally, she instructs Jorah to inform Daario that it was him who influenced her change of heart. In the book, Jorah's service in the Golden Company is never mentioned. Daenerys is deeply discouraged by the news concerning Yunkai. However, she refrains from attempting to conquer it once more. After the events of Season 1's You Win or You Die, Jorah Mormont is once again referred to as Jorah the Andal. Interestingly, individuals from Essos, such as Daario Naharis, tend to use the terms Westerosi and Andals interchangeably. In the meantime, Brienne and Podrick make a stop at an inn where they are served a kidney pie prepared by none other than Hot Pie. Surprisingly, Hot Pie takes the opportunity to explain in great detail the process of finding the perfect ingredients for the pie. Curious about Brienne's purpose, he asks about her business, to which she honestly responds that she is in Lady Stark's service, on a mission to locate and safeguard Sansa Stark. Hot Pie, however, abruptly leaves after referring to the Starks as traitors. Hot Pie, portrayed by Ben Hawkey, makes his return in the series after Arya departed from him at the inn at the crossroads in Season 3's Walk of Punishment. Despite mispronouncing Winterfell as Winterhell in both episodes, his baking skills in creating direwolf-shaped bread have notably improved. The actor mentioned that approximately 70 breads were baked that day to ensure the authenticity of at least one. In the books, Hot Pie's character does not reappear after bidding farewell to Arya and Gendry. Thus, the encounter with Brienne and Podrick is non-existent. As Brienne and Podrick prepare to depart from the inn, Podrick cautions Brienne about the potential dangers of revealing their quest to others. Nevertheless, Brienne's sincerity is quickly rewarded when Hot Pie approaches them and presents a loaf of bread shaped like a wolf. Although he admits to having no knowledge of Sansa's whereabouts, he reveals that he has encountered Arya, her sister, alive and in the company of the Hound. This revelation surprises Brienne, as Arya had been presumed dead since her disappearance following her father Ned's execution. They deduce that Arya's captor likely intends to ransom her. Utilizing his extensive knowledge of the intricate family trees of the great houses, Podrick speculates that Arya's aunt, Lisa Arryn, presents the Hound's only remaining chance of receiving a reward for her return. Consequently, Brienne and Podrick make the decision to head towards the Eyrie. Oberyn Martell approaches Tyrion and expresses his disappointment from their initial meeting. Oberyn recounts how, as children, he and his sister Elia were regaled with tales of the Lannister monster and his severe deformities. During a childhood visit to Casterly Rock, Cersei dramatically presented Tyrion to Oberyn and Elia. Oberyn reveals that he saw no monster, only an infant. Cersei falsely informed Oberyn and his sister that Tyrion was responsible for their mother's death, and then proceeded to mistreat Tyrion until Jaime intervened. Oberyn conveys his and Ilya's deep unease at Cersei's intense animosity towards Tyrion, causing Tyrion to be moved to tears. Oberyn discloses his quest for justice for his sister's demise, to which Tyrion responds, "You are in the wrong place." Oberyn counters that he is precisely where he needs to be. All those he intends to hold accountable for his sister's murder are within reach. Pledging to commence his retribution with Gregor Clegane, Oberyn offers to act as Tyrion's champion in the impending trial by combat. In the book, Oberyn converses with Tyrion during the trial, not after it. When Oberyn discovers that the Mountain was responsible for the deaths of his sister and nephew, and that in the event of a trial by combat, the Mountain will fight as Cersei's champion. Oberyn volunteers to be Tyrion's champion. Should Oberyn emerge victorious, Mace Tyrell will undoubtedly be infuriated by the fact that the very man who crippled his son Willis, who has been excluded from the TV series, has aided the escape of the individual responsible for nearly poisoning his daughter. Conversely, if Oberyn were to lose, Prince Doran would undoubtedly demand an explanation as to why his brother met his demise in King's Landing, especially at the hands of Gregor Clegane when he had sought justice. In fact, Dorne may even respond by proclaiming Myrcella as queen. As per Dornish law, she would be considered Joffrey's rightful heir, rather than her younger brother, Tommen. The interaction between Oberyn and Tyrion marked Pedro Pascal's initial recorded scene. During filming, he unintentionally leaned too far back, almost causing a flaming torch to fall out of its holder. Pascal managed to prevent the torch from landing on his shoulder or igniting his hair. While strolling through the Aerys' snow-covered courtyards, Sansa constructs a snow replica of Winterfell. Robin stumbles upon her and appears impressed by her efforts. The cousins enjoy each other's company until Robin wants to know about the location of the moon door. Sansa explains that Winterfell does not require a moon door. Despite this, Sansa agrees to include one, but Robin accidentally topples a tower in the process. Insistent on its replication, Robin's demand irritates Sansa, leading to a tantrum from Robin that results in the destruction of the replica. Overcome with anger, Sansa slaps Robin. The prop department crafted 6 Winterfell snow replicas using a combination of Epsom and cooking salt. Lino Facioli, Robin Arryn, took on the task of demolishing each model in 6 separate takes. In the books, Sansa also constructs a snow replica, but with the assistance of Littlefinger, who plants a kiss on her before her cousin interrupts. Without any provocation, her cousin proceeds to destroy the miniature castle with his doll, claiming to be a giant. Instead of slapping him, Sansa accidentally tears his doll, triggering a tantrum that requires him to undergo leeching. Later on, he demands 100 lemon cakes and 5 stories, but Sansa chooses to disregard her spoiled cousin. Sansa quickly regrets her actions and attempts to apologize, but before she can, Robin threatens to inform his mother and flees. Witnessing the incident, Baelish assures Sansa that he will address Lysa, stating that she should have disciplined her child earlier. Peter reflects on how he should have been a father figure to Sansa, but then proceeds to tell her that she is more beautiful than her mother Catelyn before kissing her. Shocked, Sansa does not resist. Unbeknownst to them, Lysa witnesses the kiss. Later, Sansa receives a summons from Lysa, who takes pleasure in recounting the gruesome details of executions through the moon door. Lysa then seizes Sansa and issues a threat to throw her through the opening for kissing Peter. However, Peter intervenes just in time and promises to send Sansa away. With this assurance, Lysa releases Sansa and embraces Peter. In a moment of betrayal, Lysa barely has time to process this revelation before Peter forcefully pushes her out of the moon door. As she plummets hundreds of feet below, Peter watches her descend with a cold gaze. In the books, Lysa forcefully takes Sansa to the moon door, while instructing the bard Marillion to sing loudly in order to mask Sansa's cries. However, when Littlefinger murders Lysa, he calls upon the guards and falsely accuses Marillion, who eventually admits to the crime under duress. On the other hand, in the television series, Joffrey mutilates Marillion towards the conclusion of Season 1, leaving his fate uncertain. In the book, Sansa defies Lysa's authority by firmly clutching onto her braid. Littlefinger utters the phrase, "only cat," to soothe Lysa before he guides her towards the moon door, rather than saying, "your sister." In the books, Lysa remains silent as she plummets through the moon door. Littlefinger's act of pushing Lysa through the moon door occurs at a later point in A Storm of Swords. Littlefinger, despite orchestrating the War of the Five Kings, which resulted in numerous deaths, commits his first direct murder by pushing Lysa out the moon door. The title of the episode, Mockingbird, pertains to the emblem that Littlefinger Baelish adopted for his own, which is the mockingbird. Since he is the sole surviving member of his family, it has now become the emblem of House Baelish. In Mole's Town, having a disagreement with Gilly regarding her baby who disturbed her sleep in the middle of the night. At the same time, a group of wildlings led by Tormund, Styr, and Ygritte launch an assault on the town, leaving no survivors in their wake. Ygritte eventually finds Gilly hiding with her baby, but decides to let them live by instructing them to remain silent. The occurrence of the sack of Mole's Town in the books happens off-page. Ygritte did not encounter Gilly in the novels since she and Sam did not reach Castle Black until after the battle had concluded, and they had not travelled through Mole's Town. News has reached Castle Black from Mole's Town, causing Sam to worry about Gilly. He blames himself for bringing her to the town instead of keeping her safe at Castle Black. Gren expresses his anger towards them for hiding in the castle instead of assisting their fellow brothers in the neighbouring towns. Jon Snow explains that they cannot go out and fight against the wildlings, as that is exactly what the enemy wants. Piper and Ed try to console Sam by suggesting that Gilly might be alive and in hiding, as she has survived difficult situations in the past, such as living with Craster, making a long journey to the Wall, and even encountering a White Walker. This gives Sam a glimmer of hope that Gilly and her baby may have survived. Jon acknowledges that they face a larger problem. If Mole's Town has been destroyed, Castle Black will be next. Furthermore, the remaining Black brothers are vastly outnumbered by Mance Rayder's army, with a ratio of 1,000 to 1. Ed adds that if the wildlings don't kill them all, there is an even greater threat behind them that will finish the job. He requests that whoever is the last survivor of their group should burn the others, as he does not want to return as a dead man. In the books, the town is nearly empty upon the wildlings' arrival, as the Night's Watch had alerted the residents, leading most of them to seek shelter at Castle Black. Blackjack, Kegs, and Mully are present at the castle as well. While swimming alongside his fellow Unsullied outside Meereen, Grey Worm catches sight of Missandei and several other women bathing in the river in their natural state. As their eyes meet, Missandei slowly rises to her feet, allowing him a glimpse before modestly covering herself. Later, Daenerys questions Missandei about whether she believes Grey Worm was spying on her. Missandei denies it, and Daenerys remarks that the Dothraki have no reservations when it comes to nudity or public displays of affection, explaining that Grey Worm, like all Unsullied, has no interest in women. Surprisingly, Missandei reveals that he did show interest, leaving both Daenerys and herself taken aback. Again, Missandei is portrayed as a young girl of 9 to 10 years old in the books, and Grey Worm never displays any signs of attraction or affection towards her. Curious, Daenerys asks if, when a slave is castrated, everything is taken away, including the pillar and the stones. Uncertain, Missandei admits she doesn't know, prompting Daenerys to inquire if she has ever pondered about it. In the book, it is widely known that Yunkai slaves have their testicles removed, while in Astapor, the Unsullied undergo the removal of both testicles and penis. In Daenerys' audience chamber, Grey Worm approaches Missandei to offer an apology, but she reassures him that it is unnecessary. Concerned that he may have frightened her, she assures him that he did not. Speaking to her in the common tongue, Grey Worm expresses his gratitude for the valuable lessons she imparts. Politely correcting his choice of words, Missandei points out that she does not recall teaching him the term precious. Grey Worm reveals that Jorah was the one who taught him that word. When she inquires about his birth name, Grey Worm admits that he remembers nothing. Missandei then asks if he remembers the moment he was castrated, to which Grey Worm shakes his head in denial. Expressing her sympathy for what he endured, Missandei tells him that it was a cruel act. Grey Worm argues that without that sacrifice, he would not have become an Unsullied, gained his freedom, been chosen to lead, or met her. Touched by his words, Missandei is visibly moved. Grey Worm apologizes once more, but she interrupts him as he tries to leave, expressing her gratitude for his presence. He reciprocates the sentiment, stating that he is also glad to have seen her. Ramsay Snow dispatches Reek, who is coerced into reclaiming his former persona as Theon Greyjoy, to negotiate with the Ironborn garrison stationed at Moat Cailin. This stronghold prevents the forces of House Bolton from re-entering the north. Moat Cailin in the novels is depicted as consisting of 3 towers grouped together near the causeway. Rather than a solitary keep, additional structures have either sunk into the swamps or crumbled into disrepair in the vicinity of the surviving trio. Theon ventures into the fortress only to discover lifeless bodies strewn about due to relentless attacks, while disease runs rampant among the remaining Ironborn, who are ill-equipped and vastly outnumbered. Ralph Kenning, the commander of the garrison, dismisses Ramsay's offer of safe passage in exchange for surrender, suspecting Theon to be an impostor. However, one of Kenning's men swiftly dispatches him and accepts the offer on behalf of the soldiers. Despite the Ironborn's surrender, Ramsay callously orders their execution and flaying. Ralph Kenning in the books was on the brink of death upon Theon's arrival, plagued by his festering wounds, and did not hold authority over the Ironborn garrison. Theon granted him a merciful death. However, it is Dagon Cod who declines Theon's proposition and meets his demise from an axe blow to the head. None of the Ironborn in the books peruse the scroll. Theon is nearly positive that they lack the ability to read. In the show, Theon Reek uses a white flag to indicate peace talks. However, in the novels, he uses a flag with rainbow colors, which is a common symbol for parley in the Seven Kingdoms. This choice is influenced by the faith of the Seven, where the number 7 holds significance and rainbows are associated with the religion. The TV series opted not to include this detail, perhaps due to concerns about audiences thinking Theon was carrying an LGBTQI flag. Baelish is giving his testimony in front of a tribunal composed of Lord Jon Royce, Lady Anya Waynwood, and Sir Vance Corbray. In the book, it is actually Nestor, Lord Jon Royce's cousin, along with his son Albar, to investigate Lysa's death. In the show, the lords are skeptical about the circumstances surrounding Lysa Arryn's sudden death following her marriage. Littlefinger informs Lord Nestor Royce rather than Jon Royce in the books that Lysa frequently referred to him as her steadfast support. Baelish refers to his great-grandfather being from Braavos. The books add that Peter's grandfather became a knight and founded House Baelish, but held no lands until Peter's father obtained a small piece in the Fingers, hence the nickname Littlefinger, after serving in the War of the Ninepenny Kings. House Baelish remained an impoverished family until Pete became prominent as King's Landing's Master of Coin. Despite Baelish's efforts to portray it as a suicide, the lords remain unconvinced, considering Lysa's strong attachment to her son. They reject Littlefinger's explanations and opt to hear from the only other witness, his supposed niece, Elaine. Once Sansa confirms that Baelish can remain present for her testimony, she discloses her true identity and recounts her ordeal of being held captive and escaping from King's Landing. Sansa proceeds to honestly describe Lysa's mental instability, jealousy, and demise, making minor alterations, claiming that Littlefinger only kissed her on the cheek and Lysa threw herself through the moon door. As Sansa breaks down in tears, the lords are swayed by her account. However, when their attention is diverted, she shoots Littlefinger a cold, unyielding stare. Sansa brings up Waymar Royce, the son of Lord Royce, who met his demise at the hands of a White Walker in the opening episode of the show Winter is Coming. In the book, the renowned vocalist Marillion was in attendance when Littlefinger forcefully propelled Lysa out of the moon door. By subjecting Marillion to torment, Littlefinger coerced him into admitting that he was the one who pushed her. This was facilitated by the fact that Marillion was despised by all the Lords of the Vale due to his incessant mockery of them. Thus, Nestor Royce had no difficulty in believing his culpability, or so he pretends. In the book, it is Littlefinger, not Sansa, who adeptly deceives Lord Nestor Royce regarding Lysa's demise. Furthermore, Sansa never discloses her true identity to him or any of the lords in the Vale. Lord Jon Royce and Lady Anya Waynwood arrive at the Eyrie not to investigate Lysa's demise, but to compel Littlefinger's departure from the Vale and surrender Lysa's son to them. Accompanying them are 4 additional lords: Lord Gilwood Hunter, Lord Horton Redfoot, Lord Benedar Belmore, and Sir Simon Templeton. Sir Lyn Corbray is also in attendance. However, Littlefinger outmaneuvers them all to stay as regent. Sir Barristan Selmy is observing the Unsullied removing the bodies of the crucified masters outside Meereen. A young boy hands him a scroll with a hand seal. After reading the contents, he approaches Ser Jorah with a royal pardon signed by King Robert Baratheon. Barristan suspects Jorah of spying on Daenerys in exchange for the pardon. Jorah pleads for a private conversation with her, but Barristan refuses, stating that he would never be alone with her again. During an audience with Daenerys, she demands an explanation from Jorah, who claims it is a scheme by Tywin Lannister to create discord. Daenerys points out that the pardon was signed the year they met. Jorah admits to providing Varys with information about Daenerys' activities in Essos. Daenerys is furious, blaming him for her near poisoning by a wine merchant after he revealed her pregnancy by Khal Drogo. Jorah defends himself, stating that he prevented the poisoning because he was aware of the danger. Despite Jorah's pleas for forgiveness, Daenerys rejects him, accusing him of betrayal and selling her secrets to the man responsible for her family's demise. She spares his life but gives him a day to leave Meereen, warning that if he returned, he would face severe consequences. Jorah is last seen riding out of Meereen on a horse. In the book, Sir Barristan discloses Jorah's secret much earlier, even before their conquest of Meereen. Moreover, he was aware of Jorah's role as a spy not due to a letter from Varys, but because he had been present at the small council meeting where Varys informed King Robert about Jorah bringing news of Daenerys' pregnancy. The TV series had intended to delay this shocking revelation until the Season 4 finale. In the books, Barristan divulges Jorah's secret as soon as he discloses his true identity to Daenerys. In the book, Daenerys initially intends to grant Jorah forgiveness, but becomes infuriated by his demeanor. He lacks remorse and remains stubborn and defensive regarding his actions. In the show, she appears numb and composed when banishing Jorah, whereas in the novels, she struggles to hold back her tears and is deeply distressed. Furthermore, Jorah is forcefully removed from her presence by Strong Belwas, a character absent from the show. Daario Naharis offers to eliminate Jorah on her behalf, but she chooses to spare him. After securing Moat Cailin, Ramsay has a meeting with his father and offers him the Greyjoy banner that was displayed at the stronghold. As a gesture of acknowledgement, Roose hands Ramsay a decree of legitimization, thereby formally inducting him into House Bolton. Overjoyed by the prospect of inheriting his father's title as Warden of the North, Ramsay and Reek join Roose's troops as they head towards their ultimate destination, the remains of Winterfell. In the book, Ramsay receives his legitimization prior to the events of the Red Wedding, and well in advance of his manipulation of Theon to capture Moat Cailin. Roose refrains from discussing Ramsay's treatment of the Ironborn at Moat Cailin, whether in a positive or negative light. However, he does reprimand Ramsay for openly committing his heinous acts without specifically referring to any particular deed. This particular episode serves as confirmation that individuals like Ramsay Snow, who are born out of wedlock, can be officially recognized and given legitimacy. However, the show fails to clarify that this legitimacy is granted solely through a royal decree. The official letter held by Roose Bolton, which bears the seal of the king, depicting both a stag and a lion, reveals King Tommen legitimizes Ramsay as a reward for the Boltons' assistance in defeating the Starks. Nevertheless, even with this legitimization, the social stigma of being born out of wedlock does not always disappear, nor does it automatically grant the recipients inheritance rights. In fact, more than a century prior, a prolonged conflict known as the Blackfire Rebellions erupted due to King Aegon the Unworthy legitimizing several of his bastards. These newly legitimized individuals then violently clashed with their true-born relatives in a struggle for the Iron Throne. Afterwards, Baelish pays a visit to Sansa and inquires about the reason behind her false statement on his behalf. Sansa clarifies that she is completely unaware of the intentions of Royce, Corbray, and Waynwood if Baelish were to be eliminated, but she is well aware of what he desires. Littlefinger appears to be impressed by her strategic decision-making, yet he tries to sow seeds of doubt by questioning her certainty about his desires. Subsequently, as Littlefinger and Robin get ready to embark on a journey across the Vale, Sansa, with her raven-coloured hair, joins them while donning a black dress adorned with feathers and featuring a plunging neckline. Littlefinger ominously forewarns Robin that individuals meet their demise at their dinner tables, in their beds, on their chamber pots. This foreshadowing proves to be chillingly accurate, as the significant deaths of Joffrey, Shae, and Tywin in King's Landing during Season 4 indeed happen at a dinner table, in a bed, and on a chamber pot, respectively. Despite the agreement made with the Lords of the Vale regarding Robin's tour of the Vale, the immediate cause for Robin and Sansa leaving the Eyrie is not related to this. The impending arrival of winter is the main factor, as the freezing over of the entire mountaintop and the blockage of the road by snow make the stronghold uninhabitable. Sandor Clegane and Arya Stark reach the Bloody Gate of the Eyrie and receive news of Lysa's demise from Sir Donal Waynwood. The Hound is left in a state of astonishment, while Arya finds herself overcome with laughter, compelled by the irony of the situation. Arya and the Hound's journey in the books takes a different turn compared to the TV series. Although the Hound initially intends to take Arya to the Eyrie, their plans are thwarted when they reach the Mountains of the Moon in the Vale. The villagers inform them that the roads are impassable due to heavy snow and frost, and the presence of dangerous hill tribes who are engaged in robbery and murder, forcing the Hound to abandon his plan. Instead, he devises a new strategy to reach the Eyrie by boarding a ship at Solpans. However, his journey is cut short as he collapses along the way. Furthermore, in the books, Arya learns about her Aunt Lysa's demise much later than in the show. It is during a casual conversation with sailors in Braavos that she comes to know about it. Interestingly, she remains indifferent upon hearing this news as well. Prior to his trial by combat, Tyrion and Jaime engage in a final toast within the confines of Tyrion's cell, where they reflect on the memories of their simple-minded cousin, Orson Lannister. Orson's peculiar pastime involved relentlessly crushing beetles with a rock. Tyrion shares with Jaime his futile attempts to comprehend Orson's motivations, as he would observe him day after day. However, despite his efforts, Tyrion confesses that he was never able to grasp any understanding. Curious about Jaime's perspective, Tyrion inquires whether he believes Oberyn has a chance in the upcoming battle. Unfortunately, Jaime's response lacks optimism. As the sound of a bell resonates, signaling the arrival of daybreak in the city, Jaime bids farewell to his brother, wishing him luck. Orson Lannister is not a character found in the novels, and the lengthy monologue by Tyrion regarding Orson's beetle-killing habit is not present in the books either. The writers clarified that they included this scene to allow Tyrion to contemplate the existence of senseless violence in the world while facing his own impending death. However, there have been suggestions that this scene may have been influenced by a similar scene in Stanley Kubrick's renowned war film, Paths of Glory. The writers and production team have openly expressed their admiration for Kubrick's movie and drew inspiration from it when portraying war scenes in the show. The writer might also be making fun of Orson Scott Card in this scene. Lannister guards lead Tyrion to the arena where a large crowd has gathered. He becomes anxious upon seeing Oberyn without a helmet, drinking, and wearing light armor compared to Sir Gregor Clegane, who is fully clad in heavy armor and wielding a greatsword. Despite Tyrion's worries, Oberyn assures him that he always drinks before a fight and values speed over protection. Tyrion expresses disapproval, stating, "You never drink before a fight." Oberyn playfully responds, "Did you pick that up during your time in the fighting pits?" Interestingly, in the episode Baelor, Tyrion participates in a drinking game the evening before a battle, and later on in the series, he finds himself in the fighting pits, ultimately being rescued by Daenerys' clemency. In the book, prior to the trial by combat, Oberyn proposes to Tyrion that they travel to Dorne together afterwards, where they plan to crown Myrcella as queen, as she is the rightful heir according to Dornish law, not Tommen. Oberyn also discloses that his mother and Tyrion's mother Joanna were friends who had arranged for Jaime to marry Elia Martell and Cersei to marry Oberyn. However, Tywin rejected both proposals after Joanna's death, insisting that Cersei marry Rhaegar, the Mad King's son. Despite Tywin's wishes, the Mad King ultimately chose Elia as Rhaegar's wife. Much to Tywin's displeasure, Oberyn suspects that Tywin ordered the Mountain to kill Elia as a response to this perceived insult, even though Tywin maintained that Elia's death was not intentional, as he had not explicitly commanded the Mountain to spare her. In the book, Oberyn justifies his preference for using a spear despite Tyrion's objections. He explains that the spear allows him to maintain a safe distance from the Mountain and exploit the weak points in his armor. Oberyn takes the precaution of warning Tyrion not to touch the poison-coated spearhead. Both Oberyn and Clegane wear helmets and carry shields, but Clegane wields a greatsword with one hand, a feat that ordinary men can only accomplish with both hands. As Gregor and his squire approach the arena, Ellaria expresses concern about the Mountain's size, while Oberyn remains confident in his victory. This is the first time the moniker, the Red Viper of Oberyn Martell, is referenced on screen. Grand Maester Pycelle starts a lengthy speech invoking the god's favor for the innocent, but Tywin Lannister interrupts him and initiates the trial by combat. In the book, the High Septon delivers the pre-fight address instead of Grand Maester Pycelle, and he is not interrupted by Tywin. After captivating the crowd with his impressive acrobatic spear maneuvers, Oberyn launches a relentless attack on Gregor, skillfully evading the knight's attempts to strike back. With each evasion, Oberyn taunts Gregor by reminding him of his involvement in the brutal murder of his sister, Elia Martell, and her innocent children. He demands a confession from Gregor, further fueling Clegane's anger. As the intense battle unfolds, Oberyn successfully inflicts severe injuries on Gregor. He first stabs him in the chest, then severs his Achilles tendon, and finally impales him with his spear, pinning him to the ground. Across the arena, Jaime and Tyrion exchange a relieved smile, witnessing Oberyn's triumph. However, Oberyn's fury remains unabated as he circles around the defeated Gregor, demanding that he confess to the heinous crimes of murdering Elia and her children, as well as Elia, all under the orders of Tywin. In the book, Oberyn solely accuses the Mountain of his sister and her children's deaths without implicating Tywin. As the battle progresses, Clegane visibly grows tired and frustrated, particularly after crashing into the crowd and ruthlessly attacking a stable boy. Oberyn strategically targets vulnerable areas beneath the Mountain's armpit and behind his knee, inflicting severe wounds. Eventually, Oberyn impales the Mountain with his spear, shattering it in the process. In the show, Oberyn finds himself standing too close to a seemingly defeated opponent, allowing Gregor to trip him and seize him. Enraged, Gregor seizes Oberyn by the throat, lifting him off the ground and shattering most of his teeth with a powerful blow. Straddling Oberyn, Gregor confesses to raping and killing Ilya as he gouges out Oberyn's eyes with his thumbs and crushes the Viper's skull between his hands, claiming he did the same to his sister. Ellaria's horrified screams fill the air, silencing the crowd in shock. In order to portray Oberyn's crushed skull, a dummy was positioned on the ground and adorned with artificial blood. Pedro Pascal's face was then digitally superimposed onto the dummy's face during post-production. In the previous episode of Mockingbird, Bronn, Jerome Flynn, contemplated his strategy for defeating the Mountain. Perhaps I could outmaneuver him, tire him out with my speed, causing him to drop his sword, and then find a way to bring him down. However, one wrong move, and it's over for me. Ironically, he was inadvertently predicting the outcome of the fight between Oberyn and the Mountain. It is widely accepted among scientists that the depicted act of breaking a skull, even by someone as strong as the Mountain, would be deemed impossible. The human skull possesses such remarkable strength that it would require an immense amount of pressure, approximately 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds, to cause it to crack. In theory, a man weighing 500 kilograms could potentially break a skull by exerting his entire weight upon it. However, the actor who portrays the Mountain weighs a comparatively lesser 190 kilograms, 419 pounds. Even if he were to apply all his weight and arm pressure onto a skull, he would not be capable of breaking it like that. The battle between the Mountain and Oberyn took place at the Belvedere, a hotel from the 1980s located in Dubrovnik, Croatia, which had been bombed and abandoned during the Yugoslavian conflict. Prior to filming, the walls covered in graffiti had to be cleaned. The set was quite warm, causing issues for the actors. The Mountain's heavy full metal armor was a challenge for the actor, who was then ranked as the world's third strongest man, as it was difficult to wear and move around in for long periods of time, and it caused him to quickly overheat. The brief moment of joy for Tyrion and Jaime is shattered when Tywin rises to declare Tyrion guilty and sentenced to death, leaving Tyrion and Jaime speechless in disbelief as they gaze at Oberyn's lifeless body. Cersei, on the other hand, watches with a smirk of satisfaction as their father pronounces Tyrion's fate. Jon and Sam stand vigilantly on top of the wall, gazing into the darkness of the north, anticipating the imminent wildling invasion. Sam endeavors to inquire about Jon's experience with a woman, recognizing that with their impending deaths, this may be his final opportunity to discover. Sam mentions that the Night's Watch vows explicitly prohibit members from marrying or having children, but leave room for interpretation regarding other activities. Jon somberly responds that Alliser Thorne is unlikely to be concerned with their interpretations. As Sam persists in his questioning about his encounter with Ygritte, Jon struggles to articulate his feelings, frustratedly declaring that he is not a skilled poet. In the books, Jon is never questioned by Sam about Ygritte. Jon volunteers to bring the watch up alone so Sam can head below. As Sam enters the wooden lift and starts descending the wall, an owl perches on top of the wall and starts hooting loudly. The owl is controlled by a Then Warg who is part of the group of wildlings led by Tormund and Styr, camping just outside the southern entrance to Castle Black. The owl perching on the wall was indeed genuine. Director Neil Marshall nearly abandoned the idea of using a live owl after spending close to 2 hours trying to get it to land on a specific spot, only for it to repeatedly miss. However, just when he was about to give up and consider using a digitally created owl, the animal managed to hit the mark perfectly on the following attempt. Tormund brags about a bear he claims to have had relations with, which prompts Ygritte to interrupt him and question the truth of his story. In the book, Tormund recounts the tale of his encounter with a she-bear to Jon Snow rather than to Ygritte. This is due to the fact that Tormund is not affiliated with any wildling group involved in the assault on Castle Black. Ygritte expresses her focus on shooting as many arrows into the hearts of crows as possible. She angrily discusses how the people south of the wall have used it to keep the wildlings out and hunt them down as enemies. She declares that now the wildlings are the hunters and the southerners are their prey. Styr sarcastically remarks that Ygritte talks more about killing than she actually shoots arrows. Ygritte defends herself by stating that she killed just as many people at Molestown as Styr did, but he points out that none of them were her former lover. He taunts her by suggesting that when she sees him, she will probably offer him a piece of ginger minge, provoking her to stand up in anger. Ygritte confronts Styr, expressing her desire to personally kill Jon Snow, and warns the others in the camp that she is prepared to shoot anyone who tries to harm him. Outside the camp, an unidentified figure carrying something walks past the wildlings without being noticed. In the meantime, Sam finds himself caught in the act of reading a book about wildlings by Maester Aemon. Aemon accurately deduces that Sam's interest in the book stems from his curiosity about what fate may have befallen Gilly if she had fallen into the hands of the wildlings during the attack on Molestown. In the book, Sam has never shown any interest in reading books about wildlings, as he prefers to focus on other subjects. In the show, Eamon also speculates that Sam's deep concern for Gilly's well-being is a result of his love for her, despite Sam's insistence otherwise. Eamon reflects on his own past love, remarking that he can still vividly envision her and that she feels more tangible than Sam himself. Maester Eamon informs Sam that he is Aemon Targaryen, suggesting that he had disclosed this information to Sam at an undisclosed time after revealing it to Jon in Season 1's Baelor. The tale he shares about a past love interest is a creation of the show, leading to speculation that the girl in question could have been Olenna Tyrell, then known as Redwine, who mentioned in this season's Oathkeeper that she was once engaged to a Targaryen. However, it is improbable as Eamon describes the girl as being forward in her advances, while Olenna admitted to not favouring the Targaryen and instead seducing her future husband to break off the betrothal. Additionally, Eamon is significantly older than Olenna by 30 years. In the books, the Targaryen involved was Daeron Targaryen, Aemon's nephew, a detail that was omitted from the show's storyline. After being dismissed by Eamon, Sam exits the Maester's chambers only to hear Gilly pleading at the gate to be allowed inside, revealing that she survived the massacre in Mole's Town. Pip tries to deny her entry, citing that he is prohibited from opening the gate under any circumstances. However, Sam forcefully demands that Pip let her in, causing Pip to relent and grant her access. In the books, many of the villagers in Mole's Town have joined forces with the Night's Watch in the ensuing battle. Sam assures Gilly that he will accompany her wherever she goes next, but their reunion is abruptly interrupted by 2 blasts from the horn, signaling the commencement of Mance's wildling army's assault. Sam hurries to safely bring Gilly inside the castle while his fellow Night's Watch brothers prepare for the imminent wildling attack. In the book, Sam and Gilly had not yet made their way back to Castle Black when the battle took place. On the wall, Jon hears the horn blowing and gazes northward, observing a massive blaze in the distance, just as Mance had foretold. Meanwhile, south of the wall, the Then Warg's owl also catches sight of the fire and alerts Styr and Tormund that the time to strike Castle Black has arrived. Jon approaches Sir Alliser Thorne, who eventually concedes and acknowledges that they should have listened to Jon's counsel and secured the gates. He somberly reflects on the challenges of leadership, noting that it often involves being questioned by every clever little twit with a mouth, and that self-doubt can lead to downfall. Steadying himself for the imminent siege, Thorne begins issuing commands to the archers, instructing them to ready themselves to repel the approaching attackers. In the book, Castle Black is not simultaneously attacked by the wildlings on both sides of the wall. The wildlings located south of the wall initiate the attack and are subsequently defeated, followed by Mance launching his assault from the north shortly thereafter. Gilly implores Sam to stay with her, as he had promised, but he is unable to fulfill that commitment due to his duty as a brother of the Night's Watch to defend the wall. Before parting ways, Gilly pleads with Sam to assure her that he will not perish, and in a tender moment, they share a kiss. Hannah Murray improvised Gilly's surprised and bewildered response to Sam's kiss, assuming that Gilly's lack of experience with romantic gestures from her father-husband Craster would leave her unsure of how to react. Meanwhile, as Sam and Pip prepare arrows at the southern gate, Pip expresses his regret for never having witnessed a real battle or wielded a weapon. Pip wonders how Sam was able to slay a White Walker despite his fear, and Sam explains that in that critical moment, he felt compelled to take action to protect Gilly and her baby from harm. The dialogue between Sam and Pip is not found in the books. In the meantime, Ygritte discreetly observes the castle in order to assess the number of defenders. She informs the other wildlings that the majority of the guards are positioned at the top of the wall, leaving only a few within the castle. Without hesitation, the group swiftly makes their way towards the southern gate of Castle Black, while Ygritte appears to have some reservations. The wall set's upper portion underwent a redesign and expansion specifically for this episode, allowing for more space to accommodate walk and talk scenes and action sequences. Drawing inspiration from the trenches featured in Paths of Glory, 1957, the design was enhanced by being enclosed by the largest green screen in Europe, enabling the incorporation of digital backgrounds seamlessly. North of the wall, the formidable wildling army emerges from the forest with giants mounted on mammoths among their ranks. Alliser commands the archers on the wall to prepare their arrows, but they hesitate, and instead Gren accidentally drops a barrel over the wall. Alliser, filled with anger, drills his men on the importance of following orders correctly, just as another horn is blown from below at Castle Black. This unexpected signal indicates the arrival of Tormund's group of wildlings at the southern entrance of the castle. Recognizing the urgent need for skilled fighters to defend the keep against this surprise attack, Alliser instructs Janos Slynt to take charge of the wall's defenses and descends to join the chaotic battle below. The initial sighting of mammoths was a momentous occasion, and director Neil Marshall meticulously orchestrated their computer-generated presence to appear as authentic as possible. To achieve this, the scenes were meticulously rehearsed with 4 individuals donning green lurker suits to simulate the movement of the creature's legs. This allowed the actors to navigate around the mammoth convincingly. Subsequently, the scenes were filmed without the green screen, and the digitally rendered mammoth was seamlessly integrated into the vacant space. Ian White portrays the character of Dongo the Giant in the show, marking his 3rd role after playing a White Walker and Gregor the Mountain Clegane. Tormund and Steyer's forces make a fierce charge towards the gate, while Ygritte, acting as a skilled sniper, successfully eliminates several defenders with her bow. Pip struggles with his aim while firing a crossbow, prompting Sam to help him reload another crossbow. The wildlings manage to reach the walls of Castle Black and start climbing them using grappling hooks and ropes, forcing Sam and Pip to fall back. Alliser Thorne arrives with reinforcements from the top of the wall using the wooden lift system operated by Ollie. Alliser delivers a powerful speech instilling hope in the Night's Watch and Castle Black, ensuring their survival. Alliser's words inspire the Black Brothers, and Alliser takes charge in leading the counterattack against the wildlings who have breached the defenses of Castle Black, resulting in a fierce battle unfolding in the courtyard. On the northern side of the wall, a group of wildlings led by 2 giants, one of whom is riding a mammoth, charges towards the outer gate of Castle Black. Atop the wall, Janos Slynt, lacking any real leadership experience, becomes overwhelmed at the sight of the massive wildling army and struggles to give coherent orders. Gren intervenes by falsely stating that Alliser requires Janos to return below. Janos falls for the deception and departs, allowing Jon to assume command of the wall's defenses. The members of the Night's Watch continue to unleash a barrage of arrows upon the advancing wildlings, even managing to kill those attempting to scale the wall. The novel portrays the wildlings using covered battering rams to shield themselves from arrow fire. However, these rams are ultimately destroyed by barrels filled with ice and stone that are thrown from above. Dongo, armed with a colossal bow, successfully launches a massive arrow at one of the bunkers situated on top of the wall, completely obliterating it and causing the death of the Black Brother manning it. The force of the giant's arrow propels the Black Brother off the wall and onto the other side, where he is forcefully thrust into the ground. In the book, Sir Alliser and Janos Slynt are both absent from the wall at the beginning of the battle. They only arrive much later in the battle, and their presence does not contribute anything significant, instead causing interference. In the book, the Night's Watch's main forces are drawn to the west by an assault on the Bridge of Skulls near the Shadow Tower in the books, leaving Castle Black with limited fighting men. Sir Alliser and Janos Slynt arrive from Eastwatch by the Sea with reinforcements following the defeat of Styr's raiders. In the novel, the one-armed blacksmith Donal Noye takes charge of the initial defense atop the wall, yet similar to Alliser Thorne in the television adaptation, he relinquishes command to Jon when assistance is required below. In Castle Black, the ongoing battle between the wildlings and the Night's Watch persists. Steyr and Ygritte relentlessly eliminate multiple Black Brothers. During the chaos, a faction of wildlings manages to infiltrate Castle Black's dining hall. A Black Brother swiftly ends the life of one wildling by scalding him with boiling stew and bludgeoning him to death with a pot. Unfazed, Hobb, the skilled cook of Castle Black, calmly enters the dining hall and dispatches a wildling using his formidable butcher's knife. Meanwhile, Janos Slynt, displaying his cowardice, seeks refuge in a storage room where he unexpectedly encounters Gilly and her infant. The battle's figures differ slightly between the books and the TV series. In the books, the wildling host is estimated to have around 20,000 to 30,000 warriors, with a significant portion being women and children. The Night's Watch, after the Fist of the First Men disaster, has around 700 men, with only 41 left to defend Castle Black upon Jon's return, mostly comprising older, inexperienced, or disabled brothers, along with some Molestown refugees who could handle a crossbow. After successfully taking down a wildling with his crossbow, Pip falls victim to a fatal shot from Ygritte. Sam stays by Pip's side, offering comfort until his final moments. As Sam makes his way towards Castle Black's lift system, he encounters the Then Wag. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, Sam manages to load his crossbow and shoots the Wag in the head just in time. Meanwhile, Alliser Thorne engages in a fierce battle with Tormund on the catwalks of Castle Black. Despite their evenly matched skills, Thorne sustains a serious injury and is forced to retreat, all the while continuing to give commands to his men. During the initial days of filming the battle scene in Castle Black's courtyard, a heavy downpour ensued, causing puddles to form and rise up to people's shins. Despite the unfavourable weather conditions, the production team decided to carry on with the shoot, unwilling to lose a day's worth of work. The Night's Watch members defending the wall successfully fend off the majority of the wildlings attempting to breach the outer gate. However, a single giant breaks through, causing significant damage by relentlessly pounding the gate with his fist and starting to lift it on his own. Jon realizes that the inner gate is no match for the colossal giant, so he orders a team of Black brothers under Gren's command to defend it at all costs. Upon reaching the inner gate, Donal Hill initially falters in the face of the charging giant, but Gren inspires him and the others by reciting the Night's Watch oath. With renewed determination, the Black brothers prepare to confront the giant just as he crashes into the inner gate. In the book, Donal Noye plays a crucial role in defending the tunnel, ultimately being the one to slay the giant, not Gren. To create the illusion of a larger giant on screen, a smaller ice tunnel was constructed for the show, allowing 7-foot stuntmen portraying Mag the Mighty to appear as towering 14-foot giants. The scenes featuring the giant were later digitally merged with those of Gren and the other characters in the standard-sized tunnel. Sam reaches the top of the wall to request more soldiers from Jon to defend the castle. Jon then assigns Sam the task of releasing Ghost from his enclosure to aid in the battle. In the book, Ghost has not yet been reunited with Jon during the battle. After descending the wall, Jon joins the fight and swiftly defeats multiple wildlings. His actions draw the attention of Styr, leading to a one-on-one duel between the two. Despite initially overpowering Jon by knocking away Longclaw and viciously attacking him, Styr's advantage is short-lived. Jon manages to turn the tables by spitting blood in Styr's face, allowing him to grab a nearby blacksmith's hammer and deliver a fatal blow to Styr's skull. In the books, Jon refrains from engaging in a sword fight with any of the wildlings due to his leg injury, opting instead to shoot arrows from a safe distance. So, Styr is not slain by Jon, and the wildling raiders attacking from the south are not vanquished in a direct confrontation, but are led up the switchback staircase towards the wall, which is then set ablaze. After slaying Styr, Jon pivots to discover Ygritte aiming her bow at him, arrow poised. A smile graces his face, causing Ygritte to momentarily falter. However, before any words can be exchanged, Ollie's arrow pierces Ygritte's chest, seeking retribution for his father's demise at her hands during the wildling assault on his village. Jon cradles her in his embrace as she whispers regretfully that they should have never departed from the safety of the cave, mourning the circumstances that kept them apart until her final breath. Ollie, a character specifically introduced only in the TV show, takes revenge on Ygritte for killing his father earlier in the season. In the books, the identity of Ygritte's shooter remains unknown. Unlike the show, Jon Snow does not confront her directly. Instead, he discovers her already dying and they share their final words before she passes away in his arms. Initially, Jon fears that he may have been the one who shot the arrow that killed her. However, upon examining the arrow, he thinks it is not one of his own. Choosing not to investigate further, Jon decides not to uncover which of his fellow brothers killed Ygritte. Ygritte's final scene was the last one that Rose Leslie shot for the series, and she expressed content with the decision as it was the most emotionally intense scene she had ever done. The decision to incorporate slow motion, despite it not being a common choice by the creators, was made to emphasize the moment when John's attention shifts solely to Ygritte as the battle noises fade away. Following the filming, Leslie received the bow she used on set as a wrapped gift. She returned to the studio to re-record her lines, ensuring that all the subtle dying breaths and sounds were captured for the audience to hear, even though they may not have been visible on camera. On top of the wall, Edison Tollett, whom John entrusted with the command of the defenses, issues an order for the men to lower the scythe. Suddenly, a massive section of ice breaks away from the wall, unveiling a colossal anchor-shaped blade connected to a chain that swings across the wall, cutting down the wildlings attempting to scale it. Interestingly, the giants in the novel do not employ bows, and the wildlings do not attempt to climb the wall. Instead, they try to ascend using a switchback staircase that is not depicted in the show. However, this staircase meets a fiery fate. Contrary to the TV series, there is no giant scythe employed to eliminate wildlings attempting to climb the wall, and there are no such climbing attempts depicted in the books. Additionally, the battle at Castle Black lasts for several days in the books, not just a few hours as portrayed in the show. It is worth noting that the fires from these barrels were not simulated, as stuntmen were actually set on fire. However, they were protected by thick layers of clothing and a protective gel applied to their exposed skin. Edison observes that the wildling forces are starting to retreat into the haunted forest, declaring that they have momentarily halted their advance. However, he acknowledges that the wildlings still outnumber the Black Brothers by a ratio of 1,000 to 1, emphasizing that Mance was merely testing their defenses. However, in the books, the ratio is closer to 50 to 1, still leaving them severely outnumbered. Meanwhile, in the courtyard below, Tormund, heavily wounded and surrounded, valiantly continues to fight as the sole surviving wildling in Castle Black. Unlike the TV series, Tormund remains with Mance during the battle and manages to avoid being captured. Eventually, John manages to subdue him with a crossbow and takes him captive on behalf of the Night's Watch for interrogation. Keeping his promise, Sam reunites with Gilly and comes across Janos Slynt, who cowardly hid throughout the entire battle. Against all odds, the Night's Watch has successfully repelled Mance Rayder's forces, at least for the time being. The battle scene, which lasted over a minute and captured in 360-degree view, required 3.5 weeks to plan and film. Director Neil Marshall decided to include it after being impressed by the Castle Black set and the action sequences. The scene was meticulously rehearsed and blocked within 2 hours before being shot in 7 takes using a crane-mounted camera. Marshall expressed his amazement at successfully capturing such a complex scene in just 7 attempts, highlighting the precise timing of everyone involved as no one was accidentally hit by the sweeping camera. Kit Harington initially described the filming of this episode as the most challenging task he had ever undertaken. However, his perspective shifted after the filming of Hardhome, as he deemed it to be twice as difficult. Just like Season 2's Blackwater, this installment unfolds solely in a single setting, the Wall, without any concurrent storylines. The next day, the remaining members of Castle Black's garrison regroup and get ready for the impending attack from Mance Rayder. John confides in Sam about his risky plan to eliminate the wildling threat by assassinating Mance Rayder, emphasizing that his death will disrupt the unity among the wildling clans and their leadership. Another discrepancy is Jon Snow's motivation for meeting Mance Rayder. In the books, he is coerced by Sir Alliser and Slynt, who accuse him of treachery, to confront Mance, unlike the TV series where Jon goes willingly. Furthermore, Jon does not leave his sword behind in the books as depicted in the show. Despite Sam's attempts to reason with Jon, he remains determined. As Jon prepares to depart through Castle Black's tunnel, they come across the fallen Black brothers who defended the inner gate against the giant. Among the deceased is Gren, prompting Jon to instruct Sam to burn all the bodies. Before leaving, Jon remembers his vow to Jorah Mormont and decides to leave Longclaw with Sam. Sam urges Jon to return, and Jon gazes at Sam with a melancholic smile before venturing out into the wilderness beyond the gate. The title of the episode, The Watchers on the Wall, derives from the pledge of the Night's Watch. Jon Snow emerges from the outer gate of the wall and sets off towards Mance Rayder's war camp, trudging through the aftermath of the battle. Upon reaching the tree line, he is surrounded by wildlings who bring him before Mance. Mance observes John's return from the Night's Watch and invites him into his tent to question his loyalty. John reveals that his time with the wildlings was part of a plan orchestrated by Corran to infiltrate Mance's army, explaining how Corran's sacrifice helped gain Mance's trust. Mance asks him about Ygritte, and John sadly discloses her death during the battle for the Wall. They share a toast in her memory, with John initially hesitant about the drink but reassured by Mance's intentions. In the books, John has a meeting with Tormund, who had remained behind, to discuss the deaths of Ygritte and Mag. Despite the wildlings pressuring Tormund to kill John, he refrains from doing so. Tormund expresses admiration for the fact that Mag was slain by Donal Noye, the one-armed blacksmith. Mance Rayder assures John that the wildlings are not finished with their fight. He claims to have sufficient forces to launch another assault on Castle Black, as well as the Shadow Tower and Eastwatch by the Sea. Instead of sending men to scale the wall, he sent them to unearth the gates of deserted castles with the help of mammoths. Mance reveals to John that he has the Horn of Winter, a legendary artifact discovered in the Frostfangs, which is said to awaken giants from the ground and potentially bring down the wall. Mance threatens to use it unless the Night's Watch surrenders within 3 days, explaining that he would rather not resort to such measures as it would leave them defenseless against the others, White Walkers in the TV series. In the show, the conversation shifts to the giant Mag the Mighty, who perished at the hands of John's friend Gren. Mance reflects on the giant's significance as the last of his bloodline, while John humorously contrasts Gren's humble origins. They raise another toast, this time to Mag and Gren, acknowledging the losses suffered in the conflict. John presents his conditions to Mance, requesting that he turn his army back and return home. In response, Mance points out the dire situation of the Night's Watch, highlighting their shortage of essential supplies such as oil, arrows, and men. He mentions that when his forces attacked the wall, the Night's Watch fiercely defended it with all their resources. Mance estimates that there are only around 50 men left guarding Castle Black, but John deceitfully claims that there are still over 1,000 defenders. However, Mance sees through John's lie and reveals that he sent 400 men to climb an unmanned section of the wall, positioned just 5 miles west of Castle Black. These men will launch an attack on the weak southern side of Castle Black as soon as Mance gives the order. Mance then changes his tone and explains that his people have already suffered enough bloodshed. He clarifies that his intention is not to conquer the lands south of the wall, but rather to seek refuge from the growing threat of the White Walkers, just like those residing south of the wall. Mance counters John's proposal by offering that if the Night's Watch opens the gates to the wildlings and allows them to pass through the wall, no further harm will be inflicted upon the Black Brothers. However, if his terms are rejected, Mance's wildling army will forcefully slaughter every remaining member of the Night's Watch and proceed south. Mance then observes John's gaze fixated on a cooking knife, leading him to suspect that John's true intention in coming to parley was to assassinate him. He realizes that John must have been aware of the risk of being killed in the process. The sudden sound of war horns interrupts the confrontation. Mance, alarmed by the possibility of an attack, is relieved when John confirms that the Night's Watch lacks the manpower to launch an offensive beyond the wall. In the book, John is about to attack Mance with Longclaw, but the Warg Varamir, using Oral's Eagle, warns them of approaching troops. A formation of heavily armored horsemen carrying the distinctive flaming stag banners of House Baratheon of Dragonstone charge into the wildling camp led by Stannis Baratheon and Davos Seaworth. The wildlings are caught off guard and unprepared for an attack from the east. They have been resting after a previous battle and quickly fall victim to the disciplined cavalry. In the book, the battle unfolds in 3 stages, with Mance and the wildlings putting up a fierce resistance, even deploying giants on mammoths, but they are eventually encircled and subdued. In the midst of the chaos, Mance's pregnant wife Dalla goes into sudden labor, resulting in her tragic demise. Stannis' troops launch an assault from the eastern direction in 3 successive waves, rather than executing a tactical maneuver involving simultaneous attacks from the north and south. Stannis' vanguard and scouts were led by a group of Night's Watch cavalry, numbering in the several dozen. Davos is not present with Stannis when the charge takes place. Celise and Shireen remain at Eastwatch by the Sea, and they do not arrive at Castle Black until a later point in the series. Melisandre uses magic to burn the eagle, or so she claims, causing Varamir intense pain, while Stannis' forces launch an assault with a vanguard of Night's Watch cavalry. In the show, Stannis' riders execute a well-coordinated attack from both sides, enveloping the wildlings and swiftly defeating them due to their lack of experience in facing such a formidable force. The wildlings, unable to defend their eastern flank, are no match for the skilled tactics employed by Stannis and his men. In The Laws of Gods and Men, Stannis made it clear that he leads his own Baratheon soldiers instead of relying on the Golden Company. It is worth noting that he still has control over a formidable force of 4,000 men. Interestingly, the Iron Bank provided him with funds, enabling him to acquire horses, weapons, and transportation for his expedition beyond the Wall. As the wildling forces are cut down, Stannis and Davos approaches Mance, who surrenders by throwing down his weapons, effectively bringing an end to the wildling siege of Castle Black. In the book, Mance's surrender does not come easily. He is apprehended forcefully following a brutal battle. The victory is a result of strategic planning and the superior combat skills of the Baratheon cavalry led by Stannis and Davos. Davos presents Stannis as the rightful ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, prompting Mance to humorously note that they are not currently within those realms. Stannis insists on the tradition of kneeling when surrendering to a king, to which Mance reluctantly explains that the free folk do not kneel. Davos questions the presence of a Night's Watch member in the camp, leading Jon to reveal that he came to negotiate with the king beyond the Wall. Jon acknowledges Stannis as the legitimate king, citing his father's support and disclosing his true identity as Eddard Stark's illegitimate son, earning Stannis' respect. Stannis acknowledges Eddard's honor and inquires about Mance's fate, to which Jon suggests that his father would have taken Mance captive and listened to him. Before departing, Jon advises Stannis to burn the deceased before nightfall, emphasizing the importance of preventing the dead from turning into whites. In the laboratory of Grand Maester Pycelle in King's Landing, Cersei, Pycelle, and Qyburn gather around Sir Gregor Clegane, who lies motionless on a wooden table, afflicted by a severe wound on his right side. In the book, Cersei is informed about Sir Gregor's treatment by Pycelle and Qyburn in the books, as she never witnesses it herself. Pycelle reveals to Cersei that Oberyn Martell had used manticore venom on his spear, causing Sir Gregor's condition to deteriorate rapidly. The wounds fester and emit a putrid odor, leaving Pycelle with no hope for his recovery. However, Qyburn, despite not being a maester, insists that he can save Gregor using unconventional methods. Pycelle dismisses Qyburn's arrogance, reminding him of his expulsion from the Citadel due to dangerous and unnatural experiments. Determined to rescue Gregor, Cersei dismisses Pycelle and entrusts Qyburn with the task, much to Pycelle's frustration. Qyburn mentions that the process will change Gregor, but Cersei's main concern is whether it will weaken him, to which Qyburn responds negatively. As Cersei departs, Qyburn begins the process of removing the tainted blood from Gregor's body. In the book, the mountain fell victim to the venom of a manticore, the very same creature employed by the warlocks of Qarth when they attempted to poison Daenerys in Astapor. It is highly probable that Oberyn's squire, while polishing the blade, applied the poison to his spears. Also in the book, Qyburn and Pycelle engage in a debate regarding whether the venom is truly that of a manticore, as it typically brings about death within minutes of reaching the heart. Qyburn, however, believes that Oberyn, who possessed extensive knowledge of poisons and consistently coated his weapons with them, hence his moniker, the Red Viper, enhanced the poison using dark arts to prolong the suffering. Consequently, the mountain endures constant agony and is unable to find respite in sleep. The milk of the poppy offers little relief, as he had habitually used it to alleviate his recurring headaches and has now developed a near-complete immunity to its effects. In light of his incessant screams, Cersei orders his relocation to the basement and insists on him being gagged to prevent him from biting off his own tongue. Pycelle makes a request to detain the remaining Dornishmen in King's Landing in order to determine the type of poison used by Oberyn while treating Gregor. However, Tywin firmly rejects this request, stating that there will already be sufficient trouble with Sunspear due to Oberyn's death. Following Gregor's public confession of his involvement in the murders of Elia and Aegon, which Tywin had previously dismissed as mere rumors, Tywin himself, not Cersei, instructs Pycelle, not Qyburn, to ensure Gregor's recovery to a certain extent. This is done so that Elend Payne can later execute him publicly, thereby appeasing House Martell. Tywin fears that if this is not done, the Martells might potentially align with Stannis and prolong the war for several more years. During the filming of Episode 8, the actor who plays the Mountain experienced extreme exhaustion due to the intense fight scenes. In fact, he was so worn out that he unintentionally fell asleep during the scene where his character is comatose. As a result, he had to be woken up multiple times as his snoring was causing disruptions in Lena Headey's delivery of lines. Cersei confronts Tywin, adamantly refusing to accept a marriage to Sir Loras Tyrell. Despite Tywin's attempts to shut down the conversation, Cersei persists, revealing that it is not just about her lack of affection for Loras. She accuses Tywin of planning to send her away to Highgarden, separating her from her son Tommen and leaving him vulnerable to manipulation by Margaery and Tywin himself. In the book, Cersei was never promised to Loras, despite Cersei reluctantly agreeing to consider other suitors. Tywin plans to send Cersei back to Casterly Rock to prevent her from influencing Tommen's upbringing. As Tywin remains unmoved, Cersei plays her final card by threatening to expose the truth about her incestuous relationship with Jaime and their illegitimate children, which would tarnish the reputation of House Lannister. Initially confused, Tywin eventually grasps the gravity of Cersei's threat, leading to a tense confrontation between the two. Despite Tywin's denial and accusations of falsehood, Cersei leaves him with a chilling ultimatum, hinting at the impending downfall of the Lannister legacy. The scene ends with Cersei walking away, leaving Tywin to grapple with the shocking revelation and its potential consequences. In the book, it is unclear whether Tywin is truly unaware of Cersei's relationship with Jaime, or if he simply chooses not to acknowledge it. In the White Sword Tower, Cersei discovers Jaime and confronts him about her plot to have Tyrion killed, which disgusts him. Cersei, however, stubbornly insists that Tyrion is responsible for their mother's death during childbirth. Jaime, taken aback, reminds her that he was just an infant at the time and had no control over the tragic event. He emphasizes that Tyrion is still their family, regardless of her refusal to acknowledge it. Dismissing his argument, Cersei firmly declares that Jaime is her chosen family and that they all have the power to make choices. Shockingly, she confesses that she has revealed their secret to Tywin. Jaime, filled with astonishment and worry, inquires about Tywin's reaction, but Cersei refuses to discuss their father. Instead, she seduces him, proclaiming that she prioritizes their bond over anyone else in the world, no longer caring if others are aware of their relationship. Succumbing to her advances, Jaime passionately kisses her and they engage in sexual activity on the table. Queen Daenerys Targaryen is seated in her throne room in Meereen, attending to the supplicants of the day. Among them is an elderly man named Fennes, who initially addresses her in High Valyrian, but then switches to the common tongue. Fennes explains that he was not a mere laboring slave, but rather a well-educated teacher and servant to Master Mydle. He served as a tutor to Master Mydle's children, including his 7-year-old daughter, Calla. Fennes reveals that Calla greatly admires Queen Daenerys, as she has learned about the Targaryen dynasty through his teachings. In this particular episode, the complete title of the ruler of Westeros from the books, Queen of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, is mentioned for the first time. The Rhoynar, who migrated from Essos and settled in the southern region of Westeros, are the ancestors of the Dornish and constitute the third unique ethnic group on the continent. Prior to this episode, they were always excluded from the full title since the Dornish were not introduced until this season. Under the rule of Master Mydle, Fennes enjoyed a comfortable and respected position in the household. However, when Daenerys liberated all the slaves in the city, she has underestimated the challenges of suddenly having to provide for so many people. Despite Mydal's children pleading for Fennes to stay, both he and Mydle have agreed that it is best for him to leave to avoid any repercussions, leaving Fennes homeless. Daenerys claims to have set up mess halls and barracks for the freed slaves, but Fennes finds these places to be unsafe, with the young taking advantage of the elderly. Although Daenerys promises that her Unsullied would restore order, Fennis argues that even if they could ensure his safety, he has lost his livelihood and purpose, being too old to start over. He humbly asks Daenerys for permission to sell himself back to Mydol, shocking her with the idea of willingly becoming a slave again. Fennis explains that while the young may find hope in the new world, the elderly like himself only face fear and misery. He also mentions that he is not alone in seeking to return to his former master, as there are many others waiting outside to make similar requests. Daenerys expresses her disappointment, emphasizing that she did not free the slaves of Meereen just to witness the same injustice she fought against. However, she eventually changes her mind and acknowledges that true freedom involves the ability to make choices. As a result, she agrees to allow Fennis to engage in a labor agreement with Mydol, with the condition that it will not exceed 1 year. Fennis expresses his gratitude sincerely before departing. Sir Barristan Selmy cautions Daenerys about the Masters exploiting the situation, swiftly establishing contracts with the former slaves who are now displaced, effectively turning them into slaves once more in all but name. The next petitioner then arrives, a goatherd holding a bundle in his arms, similar to the herdsman who previously presented the burnt bones of their livestock, which were destroyed by Daenerys' dragons. Clearly shaken and fearful, Daenerys warmly welcomes him and invites him to come closer. The shepherd timidly steps forward and explains that he cannot speak the common language, requiring Missandei's assistance as a translator. Distraught, he reveals that the winged shadow has come, placing the bundle on the ground and uncovering charred bones, the remains of a human child. Daenerys' largest dragon, Drogon, has burned the goatherd's 3-year-old daughter, Zala, leaving only these bones behind. Horrified by this revelation, Daenerys holds a private meeting with Missandei and Grey Worm to discuss how to address the escalating threat posed by the dragons to the people of Meereen. Grey Worm informs her that Drogon was last spotted flying over the Black Cliffs 3 days ago, but has since disappeared. Realizing that she has lost control over her dragons, Daenerys instructs her companions to accompany her to the catacombs beneath the city. Later, she leads her remaining dragons, Rhaegal and Viserion, into the catacombs, where they are enticed by the presence of sheep carcasses. While they are occupied with feeding, Daenerys personally fastens large iron collars around their necks, securing them with heavy chains. As she does so, tears stream down her face, symbolizing the reduction of her remaining children to enslaved creatures. Without uttering a word, Daenerys departs and closes the massive stone door to the catacombs behind her, leaving her distressed dragons to call out pathetically as they attempt to follow, only to realize they are now chained in place. In the book, Daenerys compensates numerous individuals who have suffered losses due to her dragons, despite her suspicions that some of the claims may be deceitful. The young girl who perished in the fire in front of Daenerys is named Hazea, not Zala. Her advisors believe that the father's account is merely a ploy orchestrated by the former slave owners to undermine her and her dragons, urging her to silence the man. However, she disagrees, arguing that the shepherd deserves to have his side of the story heard, especially since no one else was present to witness the incident, even though he could have not done it in front of an audience. Daenerys offers him a substantial sum of money to purchase 100 lambs and pledges to inter Hazea's remains at the Temple of the Graces, with perpetual candles lit in her honor. Additionally, she requests the shepherd to visit annually on his daughter's birthday, ensuring that his other children are provided for, on the condition that he keeps the truth about Hazea's demise confidential. This is the first time any of Daenerys' dragons are mentioned on screen. The black dragon is identified as Drogon, which is a tribute to Daenerys' deceased husband, Drogo. However, the names of the other 2 dragons have not yet been disclosed. In Season 5's The Wars to Come, the green dragon is revealed to be named Rhaegal after Daenerys' elder brother Rhaegar, while the white dragon is named Viserion after Viserys. The writers have stated that the dragons have retained the same names as in the books since the beginning, but encountered difficulties in organically incorporating them into the dialogue. Capturing the dragons proves to be a formidable task in the novel. Viserion is subdued with drugged meat and secured with chains initially, but Rhaegal fiercely resists when he senses his brother's struggle to escape. It requires 3 days of effort to ensnare Rhaegal with a net while he sunbathes in the early morning light, resulting in 6 men sustaining burns. Despite 3 unsuccessful endeavors to capture Drogon, the situation takes a grim turn as nearly 40 men suffer burns, and, tragically, 4 of them lose their lives. In response, Drogon flees towards the Dothraki Sea. Upon returning to Castle Black, a funeral ceremony takes place for the fallen members of the Night's Watch. They are laid out on a grand funeral pyre in the castle courtyard. Maester Aemon delivers a heartfelt eulogy, emphasizing that the deceased sacrificed their lives to safeguard the people of the South, who will never know their names. He stresses the importance of the surviving Black brothers preserving their memory. Aemon concludes his speech with the traditional phrase, "And now their watch has ended," echoed by the assembled men. Samwell assists Aemon in igniting the pyre, followed by Jon and other men lighting torches. Stannis, Davos, Queen Selyse, and Princess Shireen observe the ceremony. Jon locks eyes with Melisandre across the flames, her intense gaze unsettling him. In the book, this gesture is subtly alluded in which she beseeches the Lord of Light for a glimpse of the prophesied prince that was promised. Yet all she discerns within the fiery depths is only snow. Jon then proceeds to the chamber of the castle where Tormund is being held captive. Tormund inquires about why the elderly and visually impaired Maester Aemon tended to his arrow wounds. In response, Jon explains that Aemon is bound by his duty to heal all injured individuals, regardless of their allegiance. Tormund then questions Jon about his love for Ygritte, asserting that Ygritte had genuine feelings for him. Jon queries whether Ygritte had conveyed this sentiment to Tormund, to which Tormund denies, stating that he knew of Ygritte's love for Jon because she incessantly spoke of killing him. Overwhelmed with sorrow, Tormund implores Jon to lay Ygritte to rest in the real north. Consequently, Jon carries Ygritte's lifeless body to the northern side of the wall and constructs a funeral pyre for her in close proximity to a revered heart tree. Jon gazes at his beloved for one final time, ignites the pyre, and silently weeps as he turns away and embarks on his journey back home. Bran Stark and the Reed children are still on their journey to find the three-eyed raven, but they are facing exhaustion. Jojen Reed, in particular, has fallen ill and can barely stand. Despite this, Meera pleads with Jojen to gather whatever strength he has left to continue. Suddenly, Bran spots the massive heart tree that he has seen in his visions and calls out to the others. As they approach the tree, wights emerge from the snow, grabbing Jojen's ankles and trying to pull him under the ice. These wights are different from the ones near the wall, appearing as eerie skeletal warriors who move with surprising agility. Meera tries to protect Jojen, but the wights start overwhelming Hodor, who is too frightened to fight back. In a desperate move, Bran enters Hodor's mind and, with the help of his direwolf Summer, fights off the wights. However, more wights continue to emerge from the ice, quickly overpowering them. The swift skeletal wights, who launched an assault on Bran and his companions, pay tribute to the skeletal warriors featured in Jason and the Argonauts, 1963. These warriors were portrayed by stuntmen donning green suits adorned with skeletal components. Computer-generated visual effects were used. In the midst of despair, the wights encircling Bran suddenly ignite into fiery orbs, and a young girl's voice resonates from the entrance of a cave near the heart tree. Amidst the chaos, a wight repeatedly stabs Jojen until Meera manages to fend it off. The enigmatic girl calls out to Meera, informing her that Jojen is beyond saving, and that she must abandon him in order to survive. Though hesitant, Meera is urged by Jojen himself to prioritize her own safety. Tearfully, she swiftly ends her brother's suffering by slitting his throat. Meera, accompanied by Bran, Hodor, and Summer, rushes towards the cave entrance while the mysterious child shields their retreat by conjuring fireballs with her hands, hurling them at the wights. Just as Jojen's life fades away, she hurls a fireball at his lifeless body, reducing it to ashes and preventing his transformation into a wight. In the novel, Bran's group is accompanied by Cold Hands as they make their way from the wall to the cave of the Three-Eyed Crow, known as the Raven on the show. Cold Hands, a sentient wight brought back to life by the children of the forest, protects them from the wights so that they can safely enter the cave. However, he himself is unable to enter due to the cave's magical barrier against deceased beings. Instead of employing magic, Leaf maneuvers swiftly between the whites and ignites them with a torch, as fire is the only thing that seems to harm whites. Interestingly, Jojen survives the battle and does not meet his demise. In the show, the child guides them further into the cavern, where white weirwood roots from the enormous tree above have taken over. More children of the forest peer out from corners as they progress. Eventually, they reach a spacious central chamber, its floor covered in bones. In the heart of the cave sits an elderly man surrounded by weirwood roots that have intertwined with much of his body. Hodor sets Bran down on the ground, and Bran inches towards the old man, inquiring if he is the three-eyed raven from his visions. The old man confirms his identity, revealing that he has assumed various forms in the past, but his true form is now in front of them. Despite their youthful appearance, the children possess deep voices when they speak. The three-eyed crow, on the other hand, appears pale and skeletal, clad in decayed black garments with long white hair that extends all the way to the ground. He possesses only one red eye, while weirwood roots grow through his legs and empty eye socket. Mira expresses her sorrow over her brother's sacrifice to bring them here, but the three-eyed raven explains that Jojen, who possessed the sight like Bran, always knew he would perish in aiding Bran's journey, yet he chose to do so. He discloses that he has been observing them all their lives with 1,000 eyes and one. He goes on to say that Jojen's death paved the way for Bran to come here and reclaim what he has lost. When Bran inquires if this means he will walk again, the three-eyed raven responds that Bran will never walk, but you will fly. In the Vale, Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne are making their way towards the Bloody Gate when they unexpectedly come across Arya Stark practicing her water dancing. Meanwhile, Sandor Clegane is away attending to his personal needs, having just returned from the Eyrie where they received news of Lys Arryn's demise. Brienne and Arya engage in a brief conversation, displaying mutual respect as women who have defied societal expectations throughout their lives. Their interaction is abruptly interrupted by the Hound's return, instantly recognized by Podrick, leading Brienne to realize that the young girl is indeed Arya. Brienne shares with Arya her solemn vow to protect her mother, despite her failure to do so, as she was sent by her mother to return Jaime Lannister. The Hound immediately accuses Brienne of being in league with the Lannisters, noticing her Valyrian steel sword, Oathkeeper. Brienne admits that Jaime bestowed the sword upon her, causing Arya to fear that Brienne is working for the Lannisters. Brienne pleads with Arya to accompany her to safety, prompting the Hound to mock Brienne, highlighting the absence of any safety for Arya at this point. Her aunt Lys Arryn, whom Brienne and Podrick are searching for, is deceased, as are her father, mother, and older brother, while the Stark forces are scattered and Winterfell lies in ruins. The tension escalates, leading to a clash between them, resulting in both disarming each other and resorting to a brutal hand-to-hand combat. Ultimately, Brienne gains the upper hand by biting off a piece of Sandor's ear and striking him with a small rock, causing him to fall off a cliff. Brienne then sets out to find Arya, who managed to slip away during the skirmish and has concealed herself among the rocky terrain. Despite Brienne and Podrick's futile search for Arya in the surrounding area, Arya descends the cliffside to find the Hound severely wounded. He informs her that unless a maester miraculously appears to tend to his injuries, his fate is sealed. Sandor urges Arya to end his suffering and cross another name off her list. The duel between Brienne and the Hound is a creation of the show's producers. In the books, Brienne never crosses paths with him or Arya. However, the scene draws inspiration from various altercations in the third and fourth novels. Instead of the Hound, it is the Brotherhood and their new leader, Lady Stoneheart, who confront Brienne, accusing her of aligning with the Lannisters due to her sword. The moment where Brienne blocks the Hound's swing while kneeling is reminiscent of her fight with Jaime. Additionally, she bites the Hound's ear just as she does with Vargo Hoat, and is wrestled to the ground by Biter. In the novels, Brienne's closest encounter with the Hound is when she battles Rorge, who pretends to be the Hound by wearing his helmet. In the show, both Rorge and Biter are killed by Arya and the Hound. Furthermore, the Hound never claims to be protecting Arya in the books. Instead, he plans to ransom her to her family. His injuries also occur earlier and differently during a fight with Polliver and the Tickler at the inn at the crossroads on their way to the Vale. Subsequently, his wounds worsen, leading to his collapse. He asks Arya to end his suffering, but she chooses not to, and leaves him without taking his money, a decision she later regrets. The Hound's fate remains unknown in the books. Due to the stringent regulations in Iceland concerning the import of animals, the production team was unable to bring in the horses that Brienne, Podrick, Arya, and the Hound had been using in earlier episodes. The local Icelandic ponies were deemed unsuitable due to their height disparity, leading to the explanation that Brienne and Podrick's horses might have gone missing or been taken. In the scenes where Arya and the Hound are camping, real ponies were utilized in the background to stand in for their horses, as the camera angles did not fully disclose their true dimensions. The intense battle between Brienne and the Hound took place on volcanic rock in Iceland, presenting a formidable challenge due to the treacherous nature of the sharp rocks that posed a serious risk of injury to both actors. To ensure the authenticity of the scene where the Hound delivers a forceful kick between Brienne's legs, a belt was discreetly fastened between Gwendoline Christie's legs, cleverly concealed by her attire and camera angles. This precaution allowed Rory McCann to execute the kick convincingly, without any genuine harm befalling Christie. Additionally, the moment where the Hound fearlessly grasped Brienne's sword with his bare hand was inspired by a similar sequence in the film Rob Roy, 1995. In the dead of night, Tyrion is roused from his slumber in his cell by the creaking of the door, signaling Jaime's arrival. Jaime discloses that he has devised a plan for Tyrion's escape. Varys has arranged for a galley at the harbour, allowing Tyrion to slip away to the free cities. Guiding Tyrion to a staircase leading to a locked door, Jaime instructs him to knock twice, then twice more to signal Varys, who will guide him to safety. Before parting ways, Tyrion and Jaime share a heartfelt embrace and bid each other farewell, uncertain of what the future holds for their reunion. Jaime and Tyrion come face to face in the book for the first time since the initial novel. Jaime returns to King's Landing after Joffrey's death, but he did not visit Tyrion prior to this encounter. Alone, Tyrion gazes at the door located at the top of the staircase, ultimately opting to utilize the secret passages of the Red Keep in order to infiltrate the Tower of the Hand. Upon entering the Hand of the King's quarters, he encounters a woman lying in Tywin's bed, with Tywin's attire neatly folded on a chair. Drawing closer, he realizes that the woman is Shae, who mistakes him for Tywin and affectionately calls out to him, referring to him as "my lion," as she had previously done with Tyrion. However, when she turns around and sees that it is Tyrion, feeling utterly betrayed, she reaches for a knife to defend herself. Despite having the option to retreat, Tyrion instead charges onto the bed to wrestle the knife from her grip. Successfully disarming her, the two engage in a violent struggle until Tyrion seizes the necklace around her neck that he had gifted her, using it to strangle her. Even after she ceases to resist, Tyrion continues to strangle her until she breathes her last. Collapsing to the floor, he sits beside Shae's lifeless body, shedding tears, and expresses his remorse. In the books, the Hand of the King wears a golden necklace composed of hand-shaped segments, rather than a hand-shaped brooch. However, in the scene where Tyrion discovers Shae in Tywin's bedroom, she is seen wearing the Hand's necklace. In the television adaptation, this necklace is the same one Tyrion gave her in The Bear and the Maiden Fair. During their encounter, Shae does not attempt to fight back or grab any weapon. Instead, she tries to save herself by confessing that Tyrion's father and sister coerced her into testifying against him. Unfortunately, Tyrion remains unconvinced, and it is only when he strangles her with the necklace she weakly resists. In the book, A Feast for Crows, it is later revealed that Shae had indeed lied and was bribed by Cersei to provide false testimony during Tyrion's trial. His gaze shifts to the wall across the room, where he notices an array of weapons on display, including Joffrey's old crossbow, causing his expression to swiftly darken. In the book, Varys, under the threat of death by Jaime, reluctantly assists Tyrion by revealing a secret passage that leads to the hearth in the Hand's bedroom. While on their way, Tyrion overhears a heated argument between two guards, Red Leicester and Lum, debating whether Tyrion will face his executioner bravely or beg for mercy. Tywin correctly deduces that it was Varys, not Jaime, who aided Tyrion's escape and vows to execute the eunuch. He claims that he still intends to send Tyrion to the wall and is awaiting Mace Tyrell's approval. Tyrion retrieves the crossbow from the wall, loads it, and proceeds down the corridor towards the lavatory. Upon opening the door, he discovers his father seated on the toilet, causing Tywin to appear surprised at the unexpected encounter. However, he swiftly regains his composure and requests that Tyrion lower the weapon. Tywin astutely deduces that Jaime assisted Tyrion in his escape from confinement, suggesting that they should discuss the matter further in Tywin's chambers. Yet, as he tries to rise, Tyrion steadies the crossbow, effectively halting his father's movement. "Throughout my entire life, you have desired my demise," Tyrion declares, and Tywin acknowledges the truth behind this assertion. In an effort to diffuse the tension, he commends Tyrion for his determination to survive despite numerous attempts on his life, asserting that he never intended to actually have Tyrion killed. Tyrion confesses to having killed Shae with his own hands, but Tywin dismisses her significance, referring to her as nothing more than a prostitute. Tywin's indifference infuriates Tyrion, prompting him to raise the crossbow and issue a threat. If his father utters the word once more, he will end his life. Tywin scoffs at Tyrion's audacity, believing that his own son would not dare to kill him in such a vulnerable setting. He once again tries to persuade Tyrion to continue their discussion in his chambers. However, Tyrion refuses, explaining that he cannot return to Tywin's chambers due to Shae's lifeless body still being present. Tywin challenges Tyrion by questioning his fear of a deceased prostitute, daring him to follow through on his threat. Interestingly, Tyrion employs the crossbow that belonged to his supposed victim Joffrey. This is the very same weapon that Joffrey exhibited to Margaery in Season 3's Dark Wings, Dark Words. Upon hearing the word escape Tywin's lips once more, Tyrion swiftly releases his crossbow bolt, striking Tywin in the abdomen and causing him to stumble backwards. Tywin is taken aback by Tyrion's audacity to retaliate against him, and he is filled with disbelief that he will meet his demise in such an undignified manner at the hands of his despised dwarf son. As Tyrion reloads his crossbow, Tywin angrily disowns him, declaring that he is not his true offspring. In a calm yet resolute tone, Tyrion asserts, "I am your son. I have always been your son," before firing a second bolt directly into Tywin's heart, ending his life. In the books, Tywin's statement, "You are not my son," is not aimed at Tyrion, but rather at Jaime. In the book, Tyrion kills Tywin with a single arrow to the gut, as reloading would have taken too long. This causes Tywin to suffer a prolonged and agonizing death, accompanied by an involuntary release of his bowels. Dryly noting the foul odor, Tyrion realizes that the common saying that Tywin Lannister's gold is indeed untrue. The track The Rains of Castamere plays in the background as Tywin meets his demise. The scene in which Tyrion murders his father Tywin was broadcasted on Father's Day in 2014. Discarding the crossbow, Tyrion departs to seek Varys, who immediately grasps the gravity of Tyrion's actions and exclaims, "What have you done?" Nevertheless, Varys guides Tyrion out of the fortress and conceals him inconspicuously within a crate aboard a ship at the docks. Varys initially starts his journey back to the Red Keep, but halts upon hearing the tolling bells, signaling the discovery of Tywin's lifeless body. Recognizing the potential danger of returning to the castle, Varys changes course and joins Tyrion by his crate in silence as they set sail for Essos. The crate utilized by Varys to transport Tyrion at the conclusion is identical to the crate employed to transport the sorcerer to Varys in Season 3's And Now His Watch is Ended. Arya travels on horseback to Saltpans on the coast of the Vale, where she spots a wharf with ships moored. Upon approaching a captain, she inquires about traveling to the north, only to be informed that the ship is heading to Braavos instead due to the ongoing conflicts in the north. Remembering the coin given to her by Jaqen H'ghar, Arya presents it to the captain, who is taken aback and questions how she came to possess it. Arya responds with Vala Morgulis, prompting the captain to reply with Vala Dohaeris. Welcoming her warmly, he assures her of her own cabin on board. As the ship sets sail, Arya stands on deck watching Westeros fade into the distance, before moving to the bow to gaze towards the free cities and Bravos across the narrow sea. Arya's last line in the third consecutive season finale is consistently Valar Morghulis, which echoes her previous season finales in Season 2's Valar Morghulis and Misa. The title of the episode, The Children, seems to be influenced by the tensions between children and their parents or guardians. These conflicts include Tywin's relationship with Cersei and Tyrion, Daenerys' struggles with her dragons, and Arya's last encounters with the Hound. Additionally, the title holds a dual significance as it marks the first appearance of the Children of the Forest. And when you get the chance, check out our Game of Thrones inspired Choose Your Own Adventure game here on YouTube by clicking the video link on the screen right now.